The human dominion spanned 914 star systems, a sprawling empire of light and commerce built on the bones of older, darker things. It was an empire that preferred its history sanitized and its monsters clearly labeled. In the grand narrative of human expansion, the greatest monster had been the Crimson Sovereignty, an ancient dynasty of vampires that had once feasted on the shadows between galaxies. Now, only a cold war remained, a tense, silent standoff across nebulas, where propaganda was the primary weapon and true history was the first casualty. Rhett Hale was a cog in that propaganda machine, though he knew it by a different name, Hunter. Grade 3. He was, on paper, a mid-level exterminator for the Dominion's Supernatural Containment Division. He hunted rogue psychers, delved into derelict ships haunted by void wraiths, and occasionally, very quietly, put down synthetic life forms that had achieved a prohibited level of sentience. His record was clean, efficient, and deliberately average. An average record kept him off the radar. It was a vital strategy when you were secretly a dawnbound, a genetic anomaly, a human battery capable of channeling raw solar energy. In the Dominion's eyes, that did not make him special. It made him a weapon to be seized, studied, and ultimately expended. So Rhett Hale hunted minor monsters, collected his pay, and kept the sun trapped beneath his skin. This mission, however, felt different. The briefing had been delivered by a projection of High Inquisitor Malric Thorne himself, a rare and ominous occurrence. Thorne's face was all sharp angles and calculated piety, his voice a smooth, cold instrument. The target was not minor. Nixmeyer, Thorne had declared, the holographic display shifting to a dead, pockmarked moon, orbiting a dying red giant. For 112 years, the fortress has been sealed under the Edict of Solar Confinement. It is a tomb. The display zoomed, pushing through layers of swirling static and ancient energy signatures to reveal a Gothic citadel that clawed at the black sky. Inside this tomb, Thorne continued, his voice dropping, is the primary architect of the Great Darkness, the source of the plague that consumed the Altair sector, the butcher of billions. A file image appeared. It was old, corrupted by millennia of hate, showing a monstrous silhouette wreathed in shadows, its eyes glowing like twin coals. Serafina Nix, the vampire Empress. Rhett kept his face impassive. He knew the stories. Every child in the Dominion did. Serafina was the ultimate bogeyman, the absolute monster. Your mission is retrieval, Thorne commanded, his eyes seeming to pierce Rhett, even through the hologram. She is to be brought back alive. The Dominion's top xenobiologists and theological engineers will finally have their chance to dissect the source of the vampire curse. She is a creature of pure evil. Rhett. Utterly devoid of humanity. Understand that capture is the prime directive. Thorne paused, letting the severity of the order sink in. However, should you find the asset uncooperative, or should you fail to establish containment, you are authorized to enact final purification. Terminate on sight. The Dominion cannot risk her escaping that moon. Rhett had simply nodded. Understood, High Inquisitor. Now, standing on the deck of the insertion craft Stray Dog, he watched the fortress of Nixmeyer grow in the viewport. It was even more terrifying in person. A jagged crown of obsidian towers piercing the crimson-stained vacuum. The entire moon was soaked in the bloody light of its dying sun. 5 minutes to breach, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Rhett checked his gear. His pulse rifle was slung tight. His sidearm was loaded with silver core rounds. Standard-issue nonsense that did nothing but make the grunts feel better. His real weapon was the warmth in his palms, a power he kept banked like a low furnace. 2 others were in the bay with him. Corva, a lithe shadow tracker with augmented eyes, was sharpening a combat knife that hummed with kinetic energy. She was all business. Bram, a heavy weapons specialist built like a cargo hauler, was sweating through his body glove. He was muttering prayers to the Solar Father, his knuckles white on the grip of his plasma repeater. "You really believe that stuff, Bram?" Red asked, his voice low. Bram jumped, his eyes wide. "The Empress, she drinks stars. Man, that's what the priests say. She'll eat your soul. She's a vampire, Bram, a very old, very powerful vampire. She doesn't eat souls. She just drinks blood. And we're here to put a bag over her head. Stay frosty." Rhett offered a thin, unconvincing smile. "Easy for you to say, Hail," Corva murmured, not looking up from her blade. "You always act like this is just another job." "It is," Rhett lied. "Just another job." The ship lurched, the scream of metal protesting as the ancient energy seals of Nixmeyer were breached by the Dominion's brute force entry codes. The stray dog plunged into the fortress's upper spire, its landing claws gouging stone that had not been touched in over a century. "Ramp down, go, go, go." Rhett was the first one out, his boots hitting the floor of a vast, ruined gallery. The air was dead, cold, and thick with the smell of ozone and something else. Something sweet and rotten, like spoiled perfume and ancient dust. The architecture was impossible. Arches soared into darkness, supported by pillars carved into the likenesses of weeping gargoyles. Statues of winged vampires stood headless, their stone bodies shattered, and everywhere, the light. The blood-red glow of the dying star poured through fractured stained glass windows, painting the ruins in gore. "Sensors are screwy," Corva reported, her augmented eyes glowing blue. "Too much residual energy. I'm picking up movement, but it's layered, like echoes." "Stick tight," Rhett ordered. "Bram, watch our six." They moved as a triangle, weapons up, down a grand staircase littered with rubble. The silence was absolute, broken only by the crunch of their boots on crystallized dust. "It's too quiet," Bram whispered, his plasma repeater waving nervously. "It's a tomb. Big man," Rhett said. "It's supposed to be—" The first trap was no trap. It was a memory. Corva stopped dead. "I see her," she breathed, raising her rifle. "Down the hall." Rhett saw nothing but shadows. "Corva, report." "What do you see?" "A child," Corva whispered, her voice cracking. "She's crying. My daughter." Corva had no daughter. Rhett knew her file. "Corva, stand down." "It's an illusion," Rhett yelled, moving toward her. But she was already gone, sprinting down the corridor toward the phantom. She passed through an archway, and the shadows in that archway thickened. They rose like ink in water, coalescing into tangible, multi-limbed shapes. Corva screamed, a short, wet sound. Her rifle fired once, the flash illuminating a vortex of writhing darkness. Then, silence. Her biomonitor on Rhett's HUD flatlined. "Gods above!" Bram shrieked, opening fire. Plasma bolts lit up the hallway, splashing harmlessly against the stone. The shadows were gone. So was Corva. "She's gone. Bram, move. We stick to the objective." Rhett grabbed the larger man's armor, shoving him forward. "We're gonna die here. We're all gonna die." Bram was panicking, his training evaporating. "Not if you shut up and move," Rhett growled, pulling him into the next chamber, a ruined observatory. The ceiling was a dome of shattered glass, revealing the crimson eye of the star above. "This is wrong. Hail. We're hunters, not sacrifices." "We're soldiers. Bram. Now act like one." Rhett was scanning the room, trying to ignore the pulsing dread. The room was circular, the floor a mosaic of an eclipsed sun. It looked stable. He stepped on the mosaic. A low groan echoed from below. "Hail! The floor!" Bram pointed, his voice trembling. The mosaic tiles were shifting. It was not a floor. It was a pressure plate. A massive, room-sized one. "Back," Red ordered, shoving Bram toward the door. Slowly. But Bram was not slow. He scrambled, his heavy boots slipping on the polished stone. His weight shifted, and a locking mechanism clicked deep within the stone. The floor dropped. Bram screamed as he fell, his heavy armor pulling him down like an anchor. Rhett lunged, grabbing the man's gauntlet. The sudden weight nearly tore Rhett's arm from its socket. He gritted his teeth, his boots skidding on the edge of the pit. "Pull me up! Pull me up!" Bram roared, his eyes wild with terror, dangling over an abyss that spiked with jagged metal. Rhett strained, his muscles burning. He could do it. He could pull the man up. But as he did, he felt the stone beneath his own feet crack. The illusion that had taken Corva had been a scalpel. This was a hammer. The fortress was actively trying to separate them. He could save Bram, but it would take time, and it would make noise. Or he could let go. The thought was cold, pragmatic, and utterly against protocol. But the mission was retrieved, not rescue. "Hale, don't you let go, don't you dare!" Rhett looked down into the man's terrified eyes. "Sorry, Bram." He did not let go. He was pushed. A shadow, distinct from the ones that had taken Corva, struck him from the side. It was not an illusion. It felt solid, like a fist made of ice and malice. The blow sent Rhett staggering backward, his grip torn from Bram's hand. Bram's scream echoed all the way. It ended with a sickening, final crash. Rhett hit the far wall, his rifle clattering to the ground. He raised his sidearm, his heart hammering. The shadow was gone. He was alone. He stood there for a full 10 seconds. The silence of the tomb rushing back in, now heavier, more complete. Too dead. Just him. "Damn it," he whispered. He retrieved his rifle, his face a mask of cold focus. The mission was still the mission. He proceeded with a new, lethal caution. He ignored the whispers that now slithered at the edge of his hearing, ignored the fleeting shapes in his peripheral vision. He was a machine now, a hunter. He moved through halls of screaming statues, across bridges of spun shadow, and down stairwells that seemed to bleed darkness. The air grew colder, heavier. The rotten perfume smell intensified. He was close. He came to a set of massive obsidian doors, 20 feet high, carved with the image of a woman drinking from a star. They were sealed, not by a lock, but by a faint, shimmering barrier of light. A solar seal. Dominion tech. Crude, but effective. His clearance codes parted the barrier with a soft hiss. The doors swung open on silent hinges, revealing the throne room. It was a cavern. The ceiling was lost in shadow. The only light came from the throne itself, and it was not the star's red light. It was a cold, pure white light. The throne was carved from a single piece of black, light-devouring stone, easily 50 feet high. But Rhett's eyes were fixed on the dais. It was littered with skeletons, hundreds of them, piled like firewood. They were not ancient. They were dressed in the high-collared uniforms of vampire nobility, and they were all charred, burned to cinders, as if a star had been born in their midst. And on the throne, there was movement. Rhett raised his rifle, his finger settling on the trigger. "By the authority of the human dominion, He stopped. His words died in his throat. The High Inquisitor's briefing had been a lie. This was not a snarling beast. This was not a monster. It was a woman. She was impossibly beautiful, with high cheekbones and a cascade of night-black hair that fell over her shoulders. She wore the tattered remains of an imperial gown, black and crimson. But she was emaciated. Her skin stretched tight over her bones, her form frail. And she was bound. She was not sitting on the throne, but chained before it. Thick fetters of pure, solidified light wrapped around her wrists, her ankles, her waist, and her neck, pinning her to the stone dais. They sizzled where they touched her, small plumes of smoke rising from her pale skin. She was being actively, endlessly tortured. Her head lifted. Her eyes met his. They were red, the unmistakable sign of her kind. But they were not burning with hatred. They were filled with a weariness so profound it staggered him, an agony that had lasted for a century. Rhett stood frozen, his rifle half lifted. This was the butcher of billions. This broken thing Serafina Nix, the vampire Empress, looked at the armed human who had breached her tomb. She did not hiss. She did not snarl. She struggled, the chains of light flaring painfully, and forced herself from a slump into a kneel. She bowed her head, her black hair curtaining her face. "Please," she whispered. Her voice was a dry rasp, cracking from disuse. But it was clear, regal, and laced with desperation. Rhett's mind stalled. "What did you say?" She looked up again, her red eyes meeting him. Tears of blood tracked down her starved cheeks. "Kill me." Rhett's finger went numb on the trigger. "Dominion protocol is capture, Empress." "No." Her voice gained a frantic edge. "Please. You are a hunter. You have your orders. If capture fails, terminate. I am uncooperative. I resist." She tried to stand, to make a show of resistance, but the chains flared bright white, searing her flesh. She screamed, a high, thin sound of pure agony, and collapsed back to her knees. "You see," she panted, trembling. "I am resisting. Fulfill your duty. Please, kill me. End this." Rhett stared, his entire worldview tilting. This was the twist. This was the part the briefing had conveniently left out. "Why?" he managed to ask, his voice rough. "Why would you want to die?" "Because of them," she hissed, her eyes blazing for a moment with a desperate fire. "The Dominion. They did not seal this place to protect the galaxy from me. They sealed it to keep me, to store me, a weapon in a box." She took a shuddering breath, the effort costing her. "If you take me back, they will not put me on trial. They will not dissect me. They will use me. They will find a way to harness what I am, to aim for me. They will make me into the monster they have always claimed I was. A beast far worse than anything you can imagine." Her eyes locked on his. "I beg you, by whatever gods you hold dear, do not let them take me. Grant me the mercy of oblivion. Kill me. Now." Rhett stood in the vast, dead throne room, the light of the chains illuminating the hundreds of charred skeletons around them. His team was dead. His mission was a lie. The monster was a prisoner begging for death. He lowered his rifle, his mind racing, and as he did, he realized something else. Something fundamentally wrong. All high-blood vampires, especially an Empress, possessed an aura, a palpable weight of terror, allure, and psychic domination that could shatter the minds of lesser beings. Rhett had been trained to resist it, to fight it. He felt nothing. There was no psychic pressure, no supernatural dread, no mesmerizing allure. He was simply standing in a room with a desperate, chained woman. He was, for some reason, completely immune to her. His immunity was so total, so absolute, that she noticed it. Serafina's desperate plea faltered. Her eyes, which had been locked on his weapon, now lifted to his face. The desperation in them slowly receded, replaced by a dawning, sharp confusion. She stared at him, truly seeing him for the first time. She saw a human who was not trembling, a human who was not struggling against her invisible power, a human who simply stood there, unaffected. The weariness in her expression was eclipsed by a new, dangerous emotion. It was a flicker of suspicion, of disbelief, and beneath it, something he had not seen since he looked in a mirror and acknowledged his own hidden nature. It was a tiny, terrifying spark of hope. Rhett's rifle lowered, the barrel dipping toward the stone floor. The throne room was silent, save for the agonizing sizzle of the light chains and the Empress's ragged breathing. His tactical mind was screaming, trying to reconcile the file, the butcher of billions, with the broken woman kneeling in front of him, begging for death. "Why the skeletons?" he asked, his voice a low growl, motioning with his rifle to the hundreds of charred remains littering the dais. "The briefing said you killed billions. Were these just an appetizer?" Serafina's bloody gaze followed him. A flicker of profound grief crossed her features. "My court," she whispered. "My royal guard. They died trying to protect me. Not from the Dominion." "The Blood Throne," she said, her voice gaining a desperate, instructive tone, as if she were a scholar forced to explain a cataclysm. "You think that this piece of stone is the throne?" She shook her head, chains rattling. "The true throne is not a chair, Hunter. It is a curse, a collective consciousness of hunger, bound by ancient magic. The Empress does not sit on the Blood Throne. She is the Blood Throne." Rhett's brow furrowed. "You're saying you weren't in control?" It was the oldest excuse in the book. Control. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "I was a passenger, a prisoner in my own skull. I watched through my own eyes as the throne's hunger used my hands to. She choked, the memory too horrific. "It turns the vessel into a weapon of absolute war. I fought it, for decades. I tried to limit it, to feed it only on the guilty. But its hunger grew. The Dominion knew. They studied it. They wanted it." Rhett felt a cold logic slot into place. The Dominion didn't just fight monsters. They engineered them. "They came to me under the guise of a truce," Serafina continued, her voice dropping, thick with venom. "High Inquisitor Thorn himself. He offered peace. He offered a way to sever my link to the throne. And I'm a fool that I believed him." She tugged at the chain on her neck, the light flaring as it burned her. "It was an ambush. They used a solar lance prototype. They didn't destroy the Blood Throne. They stole it. They severed my connection. But only after the feedback surge incinerated my court." Her voice broke. "They ripped the throne's core from my soul. And then they left me here, chained to this crude solar battery. A prison built to torture, not just to hold." "Why?" Rhett asked, the single word hanging in the air. "Propaganda," she spat. "They left me here, alive, for over 100 years. They broadcast my crimes they provoked, and magnified across the stars. I became the monster under every human bed. The perfect justification for their purification programs. The perfect excuse to expand their borders, to wipe out any vampire clan that dared resist their protection. I am their poster child for genocide. Hunter. And now, after a century of marinating in my own failure, they have finally come to collect their property." Rhett's blood ran cold. It made a terrible, perfect sense. The Dominion did not fear her. They wanted her. But not as a monster. As a precedent. A sharp, static hiss crackled in Rhett's ear. His internal calm. "Hunter Hale, report." The voice was unmistakable, smooth, cold, and utterly devoid of emotion. High Inquisitor Malric Thorn. Rhett's eyes stayed locked on Serafina. He triggered his calm. "High Inquisitor." "Your team." "KIA," Rhett said flatly. "The fortress defenses are active." There was no pause, no word of condolence. "And the asset, contained," Rhett said, choosing his word carefully. "Viable for retrieval." Rhett looked at the emaciated, tortured Empress. "That's complicated. The asset is secured by Dominion-grade solar chains. She's weak." "The chains are a precaution," Thorn's voice replied, sharp with impatience. "Is she viable or not? Your orders were simple." "Hale, do I need to authorize final purification?" No, Rhett said, a little too quickly. No, she is viable. She's just not what the file described. A dry chuckle came over the comm. The file is for grunts and politicians. Hale. It serves its purpose. Your purpose is to obey. You were the advanced scout, the trigger. You have performed admirably. The trigger. A secondary retrieval team is already on approach, Thorne continued, his voice chillingly pleasant. They are specialists in this unique field. Your mission is now to hold your position and ensure the asset remains secure until they arrive. Do not, under any circumstances, interact with the chains. Thorne out. The line went dead. Rhett stood in the silence, the Inquisitor's words echoing. Specialists. You were the trigger. Serafina watched him. Her red eyes narrowed, perceptive. He didn't tell you, she whispered. He didn't tell you that your team was disposable, that you were just the meat shield, sent in to test the defenses and confirm I was still here. Rhett ignored her, his mind racing. He turned from the throne room, his rifle up. Stay put. He almost laughed at the team's absurdity. He moved back into the ruined gallery, finding a defensible position behind a shattered marble pillar. He toggled his comm unit, switching from the standard Dominion frequency to a wider spectrum scan. He needed to hear about this secondary team. He did not have to wait long. A new energy signature ripped through the moon's atmosphere. A different ship, sleek, angular, and painted the sterile white of a laboratory. It landed with military precision, not the barely controlled crash of his own transport. 6 figures emerged, clad in immaculate silver-white armor, trimmed with gold. The sunburst sigil of the Purifier Corps was emblazoned on their chests. They were not hunters. They were Templars, fanatics. The Dominion's holy knives. Rhett caught their encrypted frequency. It was layered, tight, but he was good at his job. He slipped a decryption spike into the code. Primary breach complete, a clipped, metallic voice reported. Hale is confirmed as the sole survivor. Proceeding to asset. Another voice, deeper, colder. Orders from the High Inquisitor are firm. Hale is expendable. If he shows any moral ambiguity, neutralize him. Our priority is the asset, intact. The data from Nixmeyer indicates she has been attempting self-termination for the last 60 years. We are to ensure she cannot succeed before she is collared. Blood poured from Rhett's face. Meat shield. They knew. They knew she wanted to die, and they sent him in as the final, fail-safe test, knowing that if she attacked him, he would kill her, and if she begged him to, he would be morally ambiguous. His entire mission had been a lie. The heavy, synchronized footsteps of the Purifier squad echoed down the hall. Their leader, a tall man with a face like a hatchet, rounded the corner. His helmet was off, revealing a fanatic's pale eyes. Hunter Hale, the man barked. Rhett recognized him from indoctrination videos. Captain Valerius, a hero of the Solar Crusade. Captain, Rhett nodded, not moving from behind his pillar. You have done your duty in the light, Valerius declared, his voice ringing with false piety. Your team will be memorialized. Stand down. We take custody of the asset from here. My team is dead, Rhett said, his voice flat. They have been accepted into the Solar Father's embrace. A noble end, Valerius replied, his eyes cold. He gestured, and his team filed past him, 2 of them carrying a large, complex device that hummed with energy. Now, step aside. Rhett pushed himself off the pillar, his rifle held low. The asset is secured by solar chains. Ancient tech. You start tampering with that, and you might bring this whole moon down on our heads. A thin, cruel smile touched Valerius's lips. We are not grunts, Hunter. We are architects of a new faith. We know precisely how to handle these relics. Rhett's gut clenched. He fell in behind them, his hand gripping his rifle, and followed them back to the throne room. Serafina tensed as the white armored soldiers entered. Her eyes, which had held a flicker of hope when looking at Rhett, now filled with a pure, undiluted hatred. "Thorn's dogs!" she hissed, her voice a venomous rasp. "Come to fit me with a new leash." Valerius ignored her. He turned to his tech priest, who was already setting up the humming device. "Brother Corvus, begin the transference protocol. Unbind her from the static field and link her to the portable conduit. We move in 5. "Understood, Captain." Corvus began to interface his machine with the base of the dais. Energy probes, glowing blue, extended from the device and touched the glowing golden lines of power feeding the chains. "What are you doing?" Rhett demanded, stepping forward. "Our duty, Hunter, which is more than I can say for you, standing here conversing with the beast." Valerius snapped. "Stand back. This is delicate work." Corvus threw a series of switches. The humming device whined, its pitch rising. The effect on Serafina was instantaneous and horrific. The solar chains, which had been a steady, searing white, flickered and turned a sick, pulsing yellow. They seemed to tighten, to constrict, and Serafina screamed. It was not the sound of pain he had heard before. This was deeper, more guttural. It was a roar of caged fury. Her emaciated body convulsed, and the chains flared violently in response, burning her, shocking her. "Stop!" Rhett yelled. "You're killing her." "We are uncoupling the ancient vampire magic from the Dominion's power source," Valerius explained, his hand on his sidearm, his eyes gleaming. "The separation is agitating. It is to be expected." "It's not agitating her," Rhett shouted, seeing her eyes. The weary red was gone, replaced by burning, incandescent coals. Her fangs, longer than he had realized, descended from her gums. Her body strained against the bonds, the metal and light groaning. "You're unleashing her. Those chains aren't just a prison, they're a dam." He was right. The chains were not just holding her. They were suppressing the Blood Throne's residual power, the feral instinct. The purifiers, in their arrogant attempt to unplug her, were breaking the seal. Serafina threw her head back and roared. The sound was not human. It was a shockwave of pure, primal hunger that shook the dust from the high ceiling. "She's breaking containment," Valerius bellowed, finally realizing his error. He drew his own rifle. "Sedation protocol, now." One of the purifiers fired a high-velocity tranquilizer dart. It struck Serafina's shoulder and did not even penetrate. It dissolved into ash, her aura incinerating it on contact. "It's not working, Captain." "Then prepare for," with a sound like a thunderclap. The chain around Serafina's left wrist shattered. Her hand was free. She moved faster than Rhett's eyes could track. She was a black blur. Her clawed hand, steel-strong despite her emaciation, shot out and seized the nearest purifier by the throat. She yanked him off his feet, his armored boots dangling. His gorget crumpled like tinfoil. Before he could even scream, she sank her fangs into his neck. The sound was wet, a horrific, tearing, drinking sound. The purifier convulsed, his rifle clattering to the stone. He was drained in under 3 seconds. His body, suddenly mummified and gray, dropped to the floor in a cloud of dust. The taste of blood, hot, fresh, powerful blood hit Serafina's system like a detonating bomb. Her back arched. She screamed, a sound of ecstatic, terrifying release. The remaining chains at her throat, her waist, her ankles exploded outward in a blinding flash of light and shadow. She was free, and she was feral. "Final purification," Valerius shrieked, his fanatic zeal replaced by sudden, naked terror. "Light her up, burn the fiend." The remaining 4 purifiers opened fire. Pulse rounds, silver core slugs, and a jet from a microflamer washed over the dais. Seraphina was no longer there. She was a shadow, a whisper of death. She danced between the energy bolts, the red light of the star catching her blood-soaked smile. She snatched the rifle from one man's hands and impaled him with its bayonet. She snapped another's neck with a contemptuous flick of her wrist. She was the monster from the files. She was the butcher. Rhett stood frozen, his rifle half raised. He watched as she tore the heavy flamer from the last soldier's arms and brought it down like a club, caving in his helmet and chest. In less than 10 seconds, the elite purifier squad was a collection of broken, bleeding parts. Only Valerius remained. He was backed against the throne, his rifle shaking as he tried to get a lock on the impossible, blurring speed of the Empress. Seraphina stalked toward him, her movements fluid, graceful, and utterly inhuman. Her face was smeared with blood, her eyes pitted. She was no longer a prisoner. She was the Empress. But Rhett saw something the panicked captain did not. As she stalked, she stumbled. Just a split second. Her power was immense, but her body was starved. She was running on fumes, a century of atrophy, fighting against the sudden surge of power. She was burning herself out. Valerius saw his opening. He jammed his rifle against his shoulder, activating the overcharge. A bright, searing light began to build at the muzzle. A purification shot. A concentrated beam of solar energy designed to incinerate a vampire from within. "Die, fiend!" he screamed. "Die in the light!" He fired. The beam of pure, white-hot daybreak streaked across the room, aimed directly at Seraphina's chest. She was too focused on the kill, too lost in the blood rage, to react. Rhett's decision was not a decision. It was an instinct. He was not a meat shield. He was not a tool. And he would not stand by and watch a fanatic execute a prisoner. No matter what she was, he moved. He dove, his shoulder slamming into Seraphina's hip. He tackled her, clearing her feet. The purification beam ripped through the space where she had been. It struck the wall behind the throne, vaporizing a 10-foot-wide circle of ancient stone. The impact sent a spiderweb of deep cracks racing up the wall and across the vast, dark ceiling. Rhett landed hard, his armor crashing against the stone floor, with Seraphina pinned beneath him. She snarled, all feral instinct, and lashed out, her fangs snapping inches from his face, her claws tearing at his armor. "Get off!" she roared, her voice a demonic chorus. His left hand, his gauntleted hand, was splayed across her chest, holding her down. And through that hand, unconsciously, desperately, Rhett pushed. It was not the harsh, burning, sterile light of the solar chains. It was his own, the banked furnace inside him. A warm, steady, golden glow flooded from his palm, through the armor, and into her. It was like pouring cool water onto a raging fire. Seraphina froze. Her snarl died. The feral, all-consuming rage in her eyes flickered. The fire did not go out, but it dimmed, receding from a wildfire to a controlled ember. She stared up at him, her fangs still bared, but the killing lust was muted, stabilized. Rhett felt it. He felt the raw, cold, screaming void inside her, the century of starvation, and he felt his light not burning it, but soothing it. "Hail, you traitor!" Valerius shrieked from across the room, fumbling to recharge his weapon. "You've sided with the monster. You will burn for this." Rhett didn't have time to explain. He was still on top of the Empress. He looked up. The cracks in the ceiling were widening, and centered directly above Valerius was a massive, multi-ton statue of a winged vampire, now hanging by a thread of fractured stone. "My apologies, Captain," Rhett yelled, rolling off Seraphina. He grabbed his rifle, aimed, and fired a single, precise shot, not at Valerius, at the base of the statue. "It seems," Rhett grunted, scrambling to his feet and pulling a stunned Seraphina with him. "This place is just falling apart." The pulse round struck the weakened keystone. With a groan that shook the foundations of the fortress, the gargantuan statue tore free from the ceiling. Valerius looked up, his face a mask of pure, uncomprehending terror. The statue crushed him and his tech priest in a tidal wave of pulverized stone and finality. Silence fell. Thick. Absolute. The throne room was a ruin. The bodies of the Purifier squad lay scattered like broken toys. The mummified corpse of the first victim was a gray husk, and a mountain of rubble now covered the throne, and Captain Valerius. Rhett stood, breathing heavily, his rifle smoking. He was covered in a fine layer of white dust. Beside him, Seraphina slowly, painfully, pushed herself to her feet. She was weak, the feral energy spent, replaced by the deep, agonizing ache of her starved body. She looked at her hands, smeared with blood. She looked at the crushed remains of her would-be captors. Then she looked at Rhett. "You," she whispered, her voice hoarse, her red eyes wide with a confusion that eclipsed her hunger. "You're your light." It was warm. It did not burn. "We don't have time for a debrief." "Empress," Rhett said, his voice all business again, though his heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He had just murdered 6 Dominion soldiers. He had just saved the galaxy's most wanted criminal. He was, officially, the biggest traitor in human history. He walked over to her, his rifle now held in a neutral, low-ready position. He looked down at her. She was a queen without a throne, a monster without her rage, a prisoner without her chains. "I don't trust you," Rhett stated, his voice flat. "You just murdered 6 men in about 30 seconds. "They were going to kill me," she countered, her voice gaining a sliver of its old, cold strength. "And then, they were going to kill you." "A fair point," Rhett conceded, reloading his rifle with a crisp click-clack. "But it's clear, I trust the Dominion even less. They sent me here to die, and they sent your keepers to come and collect you like a prized hound for their labs." He looked at her, the dust motes swirling in the bloody light. "We are getting out of here. Together. For now." She straightened, her regal bearing returning despite her tattered gown and blood-stained face. "And then what, Hunter?" Rhett met her gaze, his own eyes hard. "And then, once we're clear of this moon, and clear of whatever army Thorn is about to send after us, I'll decide whether or not I'm going to kill you." Seraphina stared at him for a long moment. His honesty was as strange and unexpected as the warm light in his hands. A dry, bitter, and utterly exhausted sound escaped her lips. It might have been a laugh. "A temporary alliance," she murmured. "How very human of you." "Yeah, well," Rhett said, turning toward the ruined exit. "We're full of surprises." "The back way," Seraphina hissed, her voice a dry rasp. She stumbled, her body reeling from the century of starvation and the brief, explosive expenditure of power. "There's a private hangar, below the dungeons." Rhett didn't waste time. He grabbed her arm, slinging it over his shoulder, and half-dragged, half-carried her from the ruined throne room. He was surprised at how light she was, a creature of myth and terror, reduced to bird-like fragility. But her grip on his armor was like steel. They moved through the fortress's screaming guts, a labyrinth of shadow and decay. The illusions and traps were silent now, their master's control broken, or perhaps their purpose fulfilled. They descended into the cold, damp depths of Nixmire, past cells whose doors had long since rusted away, past torture devices that spoke of a cruelty more human than vampiric. The hangar was a cavern, sealed by a massive reinforced blast door, and nestled in the center was a ship. It was nothing like the Dominion's sterile, pragmatic vessels. This was a sliver of night, a ship that looked more grown than built. Its chassis was a dark, iridescent material that seemed to drink the faint light. It had fins like a deep-sea predator, and an engine housing that pulsed with a faint, dormant, crimson glow. "The Blood Wing," Serafina breathed, a flicker of pained nostalgia in her eyes. "My personal courier. It hasn't flown in 112 years." "Well, let's hope the battery's still good," Rhett grunted. He located the entry ramp, which hissed open at Serafina's proximity. The air inside was stale, but the systems flickered to life as they entered the cockpit. It was a Gothic cathedral compressed into a flight deck, polished black controls, velvet-lined crash seats, and a view screen that glowed with crimson on black telemetry. "It still has power," she whispered, her fingers tracing a console. "It's linked to me. It was linked to the throne. A siphon of power." "Can you fly it?" Rhett asked, strapping himself into the co-pilot seat. "I can," she said, her hands moving over the alien controls with an ancestral familiarity. "But getting out the main hangar doors are sealed. But there is a bolt hole, a collapsed warp tunnel, unstable, used for refuse. It leads—" "Where?" "The umbral expanse," she said, her voice grim. "A graveyard of stars, a place where gravity has 9 different opinions about which way is up, and light goes to die." "Sounds lovely," Rhett said, buckling his harness. "Better than here. Open it." The engines whined, a low, predatory thrum that vibrated in Rhett's bones. Serafina manipulated the controls, and a section of the far cavern wall groaned, grinding open to reveal a shimmering, jagged tear in reality. It looked less like a tunnel and more like a wound, flickering with raw, chaotic energy. "Hold on!" she warned. The Bloodwing shot forward, plunging into the rift. The transition was not the clean, blue-white snap of a Dominion warp drive. It was a violent, nauseating tumble through non-space. Rhett's stomach heaved as the ship was squeezed, stretched, and spun. Colors he'd never seen flashed outside the canopy, and he heard a sound like distant, cosmic screaming. Then, with a final, bone-jarring lurch, they were through. Rhett looked out the canopy and understood her description. They were floating in a fog of bruised purple and sick green nebulas. There was no clear starlight, only a diffuse, menacing glow. Vast, skeletal structures that might have been the bones of ancient, planet-sized creatures drifted past. Tendrils of black energy. Dark light, as the old spacers called it, snaked through the void. "Welcome to the expanse," Serafina murmured. She was pale, her hands trembling violently on the controls. "You're hurt," Rhett said, unbuckling. "I am depleted." She slumped in her seat, her eyes closing. The exertion, the fight, the flight it had burned through the last of her stolen reserves. The blood she had taken from the purifier was gone, and the deep, 100-year-old starvation was returning with a vengeance. A low, animalistic growl rumbled in her chest, a sound she made unconsciously. Her eyes opened, and the red in them was no longer weary. It was the sharp, agonizing red of need. "The hunger," she rasped, her fangs descending. I can't." Rhett observed her for a cold, clinical second. She was a weapon, and she was currently pointed at him. But she was also his only pilot and his only source. He needed her to function. He unsealed the gauntlet on his left arm. "You're a liability like this." She stared at his bare wrist, her eyes transfixed. A line of saliva trickled from the corner of her mouth. She looked away, disgusted with herself. "Kill me. It's the only way. I will lose control." "We're past that," Rhett said, his voice flat. He pulled his combat knife from his boot. "We're making a deal. You're starving. I have supplies. You need to be coherent. You need to fly this ship and answer my questions. So, you're going to feed. On me." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with a mix of raw lust and utter disbelief. What would you offer? It's not an offer. It's a tactical decision, Rhett said, trying to convince himself as much as her. He held the knife over his forearm. Here's the new protocol, Empress. You will not feed on any innocent person. Ever. If we get out of this, you find another way. Synthetics. Blood banks. I don't care. But you will not hunt. In exchange, to keep you functional and sane, I will provide rations. Controlled. Got it. She was trembling, her entire body locked in a war between her ancient pride and her screaming, primal need. I cannot. You can. And you will, Rhett said. Or I put a bullet in your head right now, because a feral, starving vampire is just as useless to me as a dead one. More. Even. So what's it going to be? She gave a single, agonized nod. All right. Rhett held his arm out. Just try not to enjoy it too much. He was about to slice his own arm open when she stopped him. No, she rasped, her hand shooting out, her fingers surprisingly strong as they gripped his wrist. The blade will waste it. The skin is cleaner. Before he could react, she lunged. Her mouth covered his wrist, and her fangs, sharp as monomolecular blades, sank into his flesh. Rhett hissed, his body tensing. It was not a savage, tearing bite. It was a precise, terrifyingly efficient puncture. He felt the hot, pulling vacuum of her mouth, and the sudden, dizzying sense of his life force being drawn from him. It was a deeper intimacy than he had ever known, and it was horrifying. He watched her. Her eyes were closed, her body shuddering in a paroxysm of pure, desperate relief. A faint, pale flush returned to her starved cheeks. Her skin, which had been like cold marble, grew warmer against his. But then, something new happened. A low, golden warmth began to build in Rhett's chest. His secret, the banked furnace. The blood she was drinking was not just blood. It was his blood. Dawn-bound blood. It was saturated with the solar energy he kept suppressed. Serafina recoiled, pulling back with a sharp gasp. She stared at him, her lips stained with his blood, her red eyes wide with shock. What are you? She whispered, her voice no longer weak. She looked energized, her tremors gone, but also terrified. What's wrong? Rhett growled, grabbing his arm back, the two small puncture wounds already closing. Too spicy for you. It burns, she breathed, but her hand went to her chest. It burns, but it sates. The cold, the void. It's quiet. She looked at him with a new, terrifying level of awe. You are not just human. Neither are you, Rhett said, resealing his gauntlet. Now, back to the deal. You promised no innocent civilians. She was quiet for a long moment, studying him. The frantic hunger was gone, replaced by a sharp, calculating intelligence. You have my word, Hunter. Not that it means much to you. It means you live until breakfast, Rhett retorted, sitting back down. Now, talk to me. You said Thorn betrayed you. You said he stole the Blood Throne. Prove it. And so, as the Blood Wing drifted silently through the graveyard of stars, the stories came out. Serafina spoke first. She told him of her ascension, millennia ago. How she had taken the throne not for power, but to end the eternal, savage wars between the vampire clans. I was a reformer, Hunter. I drafted the Crimson Accords. I limited the hunt. I outlawed feeding on sentient colonies. I pushed my people toward synthetics. We were on the verge of peace. She told him about first contact with the expanding human dominion. They were glorious. So fast. So bright. So arrogant. She spoke of the negotiations. And she spoke of Malric Thorn. He was not an inquisitor then. He was an anthropologist, a scholar of xeno-religions. He was charming. He understood our history better than some of my own court. He spoke of integration, of a shared future. Her voice turned to ice. He was a spy. He learned of the Blood Throne, not as a symbol, but as a weapon. He learned of its failsafe, the way it could be unbonded. She told him of the peace summit on Altair, the betrayal. Thorne's ships arrived not with diplomats, but with solar lances. They didn't just attack me. They performed an extraction. They used their light, their technology, to rip the throne's core from me. The agony, the feedback. It's what you saw on the dais. My entire court, my guard, was incinerated in the backlash. But I was the vessel. I lost control. The throne's remaining power, its feral instinct, it lashed out. It took me. And I broke worlds. Hunter, I did exactly what Thorne needed me to do. She was weeping, the bloody tears returning. He got his weapon. He got his proof that I was a monster. And he got his war. All in one day. Rhett listened, his face grim. He felt no pity. Pity was a luxury. But he felt a cold understanding, a shared target. Your turn, Hunter, she said, her voice quiet, composed once more. You're no mere soldier. You hate the Dominion as much as I do. I can taste it in your blood. Rhett stared into the green-purple void. My family were colonists. On Cygnus 4, border world, we weren't pioneers. We were poor, farmers, trying to escape the core world's taxes. He paused, the memory still sharp, still burning. The Dominion rolled in one day. Not soldiers, scientists, in white ships, the purifiers. They said the planet's radiation was anomalous. They rounded us all up for genetic screening. That's what they called it. His voice was low, dangerous. It wasn't a screening. It was a test. They were looking for something. They took us to a lab. My mother, my father, my little sister. They exposed us to things, chemicals, psych waves, and light, concentrated, refined beams of light. Most people just got sick, burned, died. He looked at his hands. But I didn't. The light felt good. Like coming home. I was 9 years old. I was the only one in my settlement who survived the tests. The only one who passed. I remember the chief scientist, a smiling woman, Dr. Empress. She looked at me, lying on the table, glowing like a light bulb. She smiled at Thorne, who was watching from an observation deck. She said, "We found one, a viable dawnbound." They thought I was too young to understand. He clenched his fist. They took me. They told my parents I had died from the radiation. I spent the next 10 years in a lab, a weapon being trained. They taught me to fight. They taught me to hunt. They taught me to suppress and control the light inside me. They made me their perfect, secret hunter. And all I could think about was the look on their faces. That cold, satisfied smile. Malric Thorne's smile. Serafina was silent. "So you hunt for him," she whispered. "The man who destroyed your family, to hide what you are from him." "I hunt for him so I can stay close," Rhett corrected, his eyes like chips of ice. "Close enough that one day, when he least expects it, I can show him exactly what he created." A new bond was forged in that cockpit, not of trust or friendship, but of a pure, distilled, and perfectly aligned hatred. "He is on Etherian," Serafina said, her voice suddenly focused. "Before my capture I heard whispers. He has risen high. He is the High Inquisitor now." "He is," Rhett confirmed. A sudden, jarring alarm blared through the cockpit. A crimson rune flashed on Serafina's console. "Dominion heavy cruisers!" she snapped, her hands flying over the controls. "3 of them. They found our warp signature. Rhett looked at the tactical display. 3 heavy, hammer-headed ships were converging on their position. "They're fast." "They are," Serafina said, her voice taut. "But this is the Umbral Expanse, and this is a Bloodwing. They are armed for open space warfare. We are armed for a knife fight in an alley." The Bloodwing dove, the engines screaming. Rhett was thrown against his harness as Serafina executed a maneuver that would have torn a Dominion ship apart. She plunged them into a thick, swirling cloud of green nebulae. "They're faster," Rhett said, watching the targeting locks. "But we're smarter. Well, I am. Let me take the helm." Serafina looked at him, surprised. "You can fly this." "I can fly anything," Rhett said, a rare, grim smile touching his lips. This was the HFY, human arrogance. "I'm a farmer's boy from Cygnus 4. We learn to adapt, move." They swapped seats. Rhett's hands gripped the alien controls. They felt intuitive, alive. He grinned. "Hang on, Empress." He sent the ship into a dive, straight toward one of the massive skeletal remains. "What are you doing?" she yelled. "That's a void worm carcass. The field, it's unstable." "Exactly." Pulsefire stitched the void behind them. Rhett juked the ship, rolling them through the massive, hollow ribcage of the dead creature. The Dominion cruisers were too large to follow. They began to loop around. "They're launching fighters," Serafina warned. "Good, let them." Rhett shot out of the carcass and aimed for a roiling storm of black energy. A darklight storm. "Are you insane?" she shrieked. "That will tear us apart." "It'll tear them apart," Rhett countered. "Their shields are calibrated for plasma and light. Not for whatever that is." He skirted the edge of the storm, letting the gravitational anomalies pull and twist at the ship. The Dominion fighters, smaller and faster, plunged in after him. One got too close. A tendril of black energy lashed out, and the fighter dissolved. It just came apart. Its pilot's scream cut short. The other fighters turned, terrified. You're good at this," Serafina said, her voice a mix of awe and terror. "I'm creative," Rhett said. He flew the Bloodwing like a madman, using the chaotic environment as his shield and his weapon. He skimmed the edge of gravity wells, bounced their sensor signal off fields of crystallized energy, and led the 2 remaining cruisers on a chase through a canyon of shadow. Finally, he saw his chance. An energy route. A massive, ancient tendril of stellar plasma, long since cooled, that snaked through the expanse for light years. It was dense, unmappable. "This is going to be tight." Rhett plunged the Bloodwing into a fissure in the route's surface, a tiny tunnel barely wide enough for the ship. They flew blind, the ship's ancient sensors mapping the way a few feet at a time, while the cruisers were forced to wait outside, too large to enter. After 10 minutes of high-speed, claustrophobic flight, they shot out the other side, miles away. They were clear. Rhett let the ship drift, his knuckles white, his forehead beaded with sweat. "See, creative." "You are the single most terrifying creature I have ever met," Serafina said, her voice completely genuine. "And you drink people. Let's call it even." Before they could celebrate, another alarm sounded. This one was different. A proximity alert. "Another ship," Serafina said, her blood running cold. "Vampire, old signature, a raider class." A ship decloaked in front of them. It was a brutal, ugly thing, all spikes and visible weapon ports, the old sigil of the Crimson Sovereignty, a fanged skull drinking from a star painted on its hull. "They're hailing us," Rhett said, his hand on his sidearm. Serafina's face was a mask of stone. "Put it through." A grainy image appeared on the main screen. A male vampire, broad-shouldered, with a scarred face and cold, dead eyes, appeared. "Unidentified Bloodwing," he growled. "This is Captain Malachor of the Crimson Blade. Surrender your vessel and your blood, and we might grant you a quick end." Serafina leaned forward into the light. Captain Malakor's eyes widened. The arrogant sneer on his face collapsed. He stared, his mouth open, his skin turning a chalky white. He dropped from his chair, his head hitting the deck of his own bridge with a loud thud. He was on his knees. My Empress," he stammered, his voice trembling with a primal, religious terror. "You are alive. You have returned." Rhett looked at Serafina. Her expression was unreadable. She had, in an instant, gone from fugitive to deity. "Captain Malakor," she said, her voice the cold, clear bell of command. "You have forgotten your oaths. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. I will speak with you. Now." "Yes, Empress at once. My queen." The screen went dark. Rhett looked at her. So much for no masters. "They are lost," Serafina said, her voice distant. "And they are the only ones left." The Bloodwing docked with the Crimson Blade. Rhett and Serafina crossed the boarding tube, stepping into the Raider's main hold. The entire crew, 24 vampires in patched armor, were on their knees, their heads pressed to the floor. Malakor, the scarred captain, was at their head, his face a mask of adoration. "My Empress, we thought the Dominion had destroyed you. We have been scavenging, waiting, for your return, to lead us, to rebuild sovereignty, to take vengeance." Rhett stood behind Serafina, his rifle held loosely, watching. This was her moment, her choice. Serafina looked at the kneeling vampires. She looked at their savage, desperate faces. She saw the old cycle, the hunger for power, for vengeance, for a leader to tell them who to kill. "Stand up, Malakor," she commanded. He rose, his eyes shining. "The Crimson Sovereignty is dead," she said, her voice echoing in the hold. Malakor's face fell. "But Empress, I am not your Empress. That thing died in Nixmire. It died when the Dominion tore the throne from me and left me to rot. That name is a chain, just like the ones that held me." She walked among them, her gaze passing over each one. "You are not soldiers. You are not servants. You are survivors. The old ways, the empire, the blood throne, the endless war. It is a lie. It is a machine designed to feed us all, human and vampire." She stopped in front of Malakor. "I will not lead you. I will not give you vengeance. I give you something far more valuable. I give you your freedom. Disband, scatter, hide, live for yourselves, not for a flag, not for a throne, and not for me." The vampires stared, confused, lost. They had been expecting a queen. They were given an abdication. "But without you," Malakor whispered. "What are we—" "You are free," she said, her voice soft but absolute. "That is all that matters. Now go." They turned to leave the ship. "Wait," Rhett said. Malakor turned, his eyes narrowing at the human. "What?" "The Dominion ships. The ones chasing us. They're still out there. Do you have any intel?" Malakor's expression shifted. "The dogs. Yes. We just destroyed a Dominion recon drone that got too close. We took its data core. Vengeance," he added, with a defiant look at Serafina. "Give it to me," Rhett ordered. Malakor hesitated, then pulled a silver cylinder from his belt and tossed it to Rhett. "It is encrypted. Useless." "We'll see." Rhett turned to Serafina. "Let's go." They returned to the Bloodwing's cockpit, the silence thick between them. Rhett plugged the data core into the ship's console. "Can your systems break this? It's high-grade Dominion encryption." "This ship," Serafina said, her fingers flying, "was built on magic, humans. It does not break encryption. It unweaves it." The file bloomed on the screen. It was not a recon drone's file. It was a captured purifier archive, a deep-level file being transported, and it held the truth. Rhett and Serafina watched, their faces illuminated by the crimson glow of the screen. They saw file footage, ancient, grainy. A Dominion black site, millennia ago. Human prisoners, being injected with glowing nanites, being strapped to tables under focusing lenses that channeled raw, unfiltered starlight. They heard a familiar voice, younger, but still cold. Malric Thorne. Project Sanguine, Phase 1. The goal is not just a better soldier. The goal is immortality, a controllable, superior life form. We will be the new gods of this galaxy. They saw the failures, the monsters, the uncontrolled rages, the first vampires. They saw the cover-up. The Dominion military fakes an ancient evil discovery. They saw the creation of the Supernatural Containment Division, and they saw her file. Designate Nyx, Thorne's voice narrated, as the screen showed a captured, sleeping woman who looked almost human. A genetic throwback from an ancient, pre-human line. Her body accepts the stellar magic. It metabolizes nanites. She is not a monster. She is a vessel, a perfected vessel. We will graft the blood-throne consciousness to her. She will be our controllable, ultimate weapon. Rhett's blood turned to ice. She was no vampire who had been corrupted. She was a human experiment, designed to be a vampire. The entire species was a human invention, a military project gone wrong. He looked at Serafina. She was shaking, her face a mask of such profound violation, such utter horror, that he had no words. Everything she was, everyone she had ever known, her entire race was a lie, a weapon. The file continued. A new entry, dated 2 days ago. A holographic image of Malric Thorne appeared, older, colder. The peace conference on Etherian is set. The remaining vampire clans are foolishly attending. Believing we will offer them clemency, we will, instead, offer them a demonstration, he smiled. Once the Empress is retrieved and reintegrated with the Blood Throne, we will demonstrate true control. We will have her execute the entire vampire delegation, live, for the galaxy to see. The Dominion will, at last, have its perfect monster, and its final, unshakable control. The age of humanity is truly at hand. The file ended. Rhett and Serafina sat in the darkness of the cockpit, the silence stretching for an eternity. Rhett spoke first, his voice a low, lethal whisper. Etherian, the peace conference. Serafina looked at him. The grief in her eyes was gone. The horror was gone. It had been forged, in that instant, into a cold, diamond-hard, and absolutely pure resolve. He didn't just steal my life, Hunter, she said, her voice terrible and clear. He wrote it, and now he plans to write the final chapter. No, Rhett said, his hands taking the controls. He set a course, a single destination in the ship's ancient navigation system. He doesn't. He looked at her, his own rage a mirror of hers. He's not writing the ending. We are. He engaged the driver, and the Bloodwing shot into the chaotic, dark void, its new purpose clear. They were no longer running. They were hunting. Etherian was the jewel of the human dominion, the capital planet, a monument to the triumph of light over dark. Its capital, the Citadel of Dawn, was a city of soaring white towers and golden arches, a metropolis encased in a shimmering, lattice-like dome. This was the solar shield, an atmospheric filter that captured the harsh radiation of its blue-white star and transformed it into a soft, perpetual, life-giving golden noon. It was the brightest, safest, most sanctified city in the 914 systems. And, to Serafina, it was the most oppressive hell she had ever witnessed. I feel scoured, she murmured, her voice lost in the polite din of the Citadel's grand concourse. She kept her head bowed, playing the part. She was unrecognizable. Her centuries of starvation had been reversed by Rhett's donation. Her features were full, her skin a healthy, luminous pale, not the gray of Nixmeyer. Her blood-red eyes were hidden behind dark, opaque contact lenses. Her midnight black hair was pinned up in the severe style of the Hecatean vampire clans. She was draped in the dark, modest robes of a neutral delegate, her hands clasped before her. She was Baroness Saria of the Shattered Veil, a fictitious clan of ascetic vampires Rhett had invented, citing their neutrality and supposed disgust with the old, crimson sovereignty. Rhett, in a crisp black liaison's uniform, walked half a step behind her, playing the part of her human interpreter and aide. "Just breathe, Baroness," he muttered, scanning the crowd. "It's all theater." "It is a stage set for a slaughter," she replied, her voice tight. The concourse was filled with the galaxy's elite, human politicians in shimmering silks, stern Dominion admirals with chests full of medals, alien dignitaries from allied protectorates, and, huddled in a segregated, shadowed alcove, the vampires. They were the remnants, a few dozen lords and ladies from minor clans, the ones who had survived the Dominion's purges by bending the knee. They looked cowed, nervous, their finery looking more like funeral shrouds. They were here to sign away their future for the promise of survival. A corpulent, human duke, his face ruddy with wine, paused as they passed. "Ah, the Hecatean delegation. A pleasure. So rare to see your kind this far into the core." "We go where wisdom guides us, Your Grace," Serafina said, her voice a perfect blend of humility and cold distance. The Duke chuckled. "A wise choice. A new dawn is breaking. High Inquisitor Thorn is a visionary. He is cleansing the galaxy of the old shadows. A new, unified age." "Indeed," Rhett interjected smoothly, stepping forward. The Baroness was just remarking on the Citadel. "Such commitment to illumination. You must have a formidable power bill." The Duke laughed, a high, wheezing sound. "The dawn is free. My boy, a gift from the Solar Father to his faithful. You and your mistress would do well to remember which side provides the light." He winked, patted his stomach, and moved on. Serafina's fingers tightened into fists beneath her robes. "If I were not so famished, I would drain that insufferable creature where he stands." "You promised," Rhett said, his voice a low warning. "No civilians. Besides, he's just a symptom. The disease is arriving." He nodded toward the front of the hall. The crowd's polite murmur hushed, turning into a wave of respectful applause. High Inquisitor Malric Thorn strode onto the main dais, and Rhett's blood went cold. This was not the man from the encrypted files, the cold scientist in a lab coat. This was a savior. He wore the immaculate white and gold robes of his office, his face serene, beatific. He radiated a calm, powerful charisma that washed over the crowd. He raised his hands, and the hall fell utterly silent. "Friends," Thorn began, his voice magically amplified, warm, and resonant. "Delegates, brothers and sisters of the light, we gather today not to mark an ending, but to celebrate a new beginning." Rhett felt Serafina trembling beside him. Not with fear, with a rage so profound it was almost sub-zero. "For over 112 years, Thorn continued, our dominion has borne a sacred burden. We have been the shield against the great darkness. We have fought the shadow, the hunger, the plague that was the Crimson Sovereignty. We faced the architect of that ancient evil, the butcher of billions. Serafina Nix." He paused, letting the name hang in the air, a collective shudder passing through the assembly. "We fought her. We defeated her. And we sealed her away in her tomb of Nixmeyer, a monument to her evil and our resolve. "Liar!" Seraphina breathed, so low only Rhett could hear. "But the battle is not over," Thorn declared, his voice rising in righteous passion. "The shadow lingers. The plague of vampirism, though weakened, still exists. It tempts the weak. It corrupts the unwary. It is a sickness that must be managed, cured, for the good of all." He gestured to the segregated vampire delegation. "These noble souls, these survivors understand. They have come here today in good faith, to join us, to accept our guidance, to accept our protection." He unrolled a large, illuminated scroll. "The Etherian Accords, a treaty of peace, a promise of a shared future. It grants the Dominion, in its wisdom, the sacred authority to monitor, to guide, and, where necessary, to cleanse the remaining bloodlines, to ensure the galaxy never again faces such a night." Rhett knew what it was. A death warrant signed by victims. It would give Thorn the legal right to hunt down and exterminate every vampire, all under the guise of peace and security. "He is going to make them sign it," Rhett murmured. "And then he'll begin the purge. And the galaxy will applaud him for it," Seraphina added, her voice dead. Thorn held up a golden stylus. "And now, I invite the lords of the remaining clans to come forth and sign the accords, to step out of the shadow and into the dawn." This was it. Rhett, standing just behind the main assembly, slipped his hand into his uniform pocket. He grabbed the dataset he had taken from the Raiders' drone. He had spent their journey slicing through its final encryption layers. It was ready. "I need a terminal," he whispered to Seraphina. "A public one." "There," she said, nodding subtly to a raised alcove reserved for press and data links. "Go. I will create a distraction if you need one. Just stay put," he said. He broke from her side, moving with the practiced, invisible gait of a hunter, blending with the other aides and security personnel. He mounted the steps to the alcove, his heart hammering. Two press aides were busy uploading Thorn's benevolent speech. "Excuse me," Rhett said, his voice calm. "Inquisitor's aide. I have the final signatory list. Must be uploaded to the main screen for verification." The aides, eager to please, nodded and stepped aside from the main broadcast terminal. "Of course, sir, right here." "Thank you for your service to the light." Rhett slid the data core into the port. His fingers flew across the console, not uploading a list, but burrowing into the Citadel's core broadcast system. He found the emergency override, the "this is not a drill" protocol, reserved for planetary invasion or solar flare. He looked down at Thorn, who was smiling, holding the stylus out to the first trembling vampire lord. "Now." Rhett slammed his palm onto the activation panel. On the massive, 50-foot-high view screen behind Malric Thorn, his beatific, smiling face vanished. It was replaced by a grainy, black-and-white video. A lab. A younger Malric Thorn, his face cold, clinical, watching through observation glass. A human prisoner, strapped to a table, screaming as nanites and stellar energy were pumped into his body. The prisoner convulsed, his teeth elongating, his eyes turning red, before he flatlined. "Project Sanguine. Test Subject 412. Failure." Thorn's younger voice echoed through the stunned, silent hall. "The nanites are incompatible with standard human genetics. We require a different vessel." The video cut. A new scene. The sleeping woman, Seraphina's original human form. "Designate Nyx," Thorn's voice narrated. "Her unique genetic structure accepts the stellar infusion. We will graft the blood-throne consciousness. She will be our controllable, ultimate weapon." A gasp rippled through the crowd. The vampire lords froze, staring. The screen changed again. A torture chamber. A vampire, chained to a wall. A purifier, holding a searing brand. "Where are the hidden clans? Talk." It changed again. A Thorn video file, dated weeks ago. "The peace conference is a formality. Once the Empress is retrieved, she will be reintegrated with the throne. We will have her execute the entire vampire delegation. Live, for the galaxy to see. The age of humanity is truly at hand." The hall erupted. It was not just the vampires. It was the human senators, the alien dignitaries, the press. They were screaming, pointing, a wave of pure, undiluted horror washing over the assembly. "Lies!" a Dominion admiral roared. "Treason, shut it down!" But it was too late. The override was absolute. Serafina, standing alone in the crowd, pulled the contacts from her eyes, letting her true, burning crimson gaze sweep the hall. She was not a victim. She was an exhibit. Malric Thorn did not panic. His serene smile did not falter. It simply changed. The warmth evaporated, leaving something reptilian, cold, and utterly furious. The mask was off. He raised his hand, not in greeting, but in judgment. "It seems," he boomed, his voice cutting through the chaos. "The vampire plague has infected our very archives. A desperate, final lie. But it proves my point. The rot is deep. It must be burned out." He looked at the Solar Guard, the elite, white-armored soldiers lining the hall. "Captain, the vampire delegation is compromised. The entire assembly is compromised. Activate the Citadel Protocol. Purify this hall for the dawn." The captain did not hesitate. "Yes, High Inquisitor." He slammed his fist onto a red panel on the wall. Alarms blared. Massive, reinforced steel doors slammed shut, sealing the grand hall. The exits were gone. Above, the golden, lattice dome, the solar shield, began to change. The soft, ambient light vanished, replaced by a searing, white-hot intensity. Emitters, hidden in the arches, began to power up, their hum rising to a deafening shriek. "What is this?" a human senator from Aldebaran screamed, pounding on the sealed door. "He's killing us all," another shrieked. "He's locking us in." Thorn looked at the panicked crowd with cold contempt. "A necessary sacrifice. Better that 1,900 die here, than 900 systems fall to darkness. The plague, and all who have touched it, will be scoured." The vampire lords were screaming, their skin already beginning to blister and smoke under the intensified, weaponized light. They were trapped. From the alcove, Rhett watched the scene he had unleashed. He saw the vampires shielding their faces. He saw the innocent human delegates and alien dignitaries trapped with them. Collateral damage in Thorn's insane, final gambit. He had wanted to expose Thorn. He had not wanted this. The first emitter fired. A lance of pure, concentrated sunlight, as hot as a star's core, shot down. It struck a group of Cretacean delegates, and they and their vampire neighbors vaporized instantly, their shadows burning onto the marble floor. "No," Rhett whispered. His dawn-bound instinct, the furnace he had kept banked for 20 years, did not ask for permission. It roared. He vaulted over the balcony, dropping 50 feet to the main floor, landing in a three-point crouch that cracked the marble beneath him. "Serafina, get down!" he bellowed. The other emitters fired. A dozen beams of incandescent death lanced toward the crowd. Rhett stood up. He threw his arms wide, and he let go. He roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony and release. The light did not hit the floor. It hit him. The beams of concentrated sunlight, energy that could vaporize steel, struck his body and did not burn. They were absorbed. Rhett's uniform was incinerated in a microsecond. His tactical armor glowed white-hot, then melted from his frame like wax. His skin, his body, became a conduit. The assembly stared, their panic frozen. In the center of the hall, stood a man, or the silhouette of a man, now composed of pure, blinding, golden light. He was a miniature sun. He was absorbing the full, lethal power of the Citadel Protocol, a torrent of energy capable of sterilizing a city, and he was containing it. Seraphina stared, her hands over her mouth, her skin shielded by his radiant shadow. The terror she felt was deeper than anything Nixmeyer had given her. This was not a hunter. This was not a human. This was the physical, walking embodiment of the power that had tortured her for a century. This was the dawn. Rhett felt the power flood him. It was ecstasy. It was agony. It was too much. He was a dam about to burst. He was going to detonate a solar flare bomb that would wipe Etherian clean. He had to release it. He had to aim for it. He looked at the Solar Guard, who were now raising their pulse rifles. He looked at the emitters, still pouring energy into him. He raised his right hand. He did not unleash a wave. He was a hunter, trained for precision. He was a farmer's boy, trained to be creative. A beam of golden, searing light, purer than any star, lanced from his palm. It struck the first emitter in the ceiling. The emitter exploded in a shower of sparks and molten metal. The Solar Guard opened fire. Their pulse rounds dissolved into steam 100 feet from his body. Rhett turned. He raised his left hand. Another beam, surgical and perfect, struck the main guard post, melting their rifles into slag. He moved through the hall, a god of light, a terrifying, avenging angel. He was not burning the crowd. He was saving them. He absorbed the death beams from above, and he channeled that power to systematically, precisely, and non-lethally destroy every weapon, every emitter, every single threat in the hall. He was the ultimate expression of HFY, a human, designed as a weapon by a corrupt system, now mastering the very power of the stars to defy his creators and protect the innocent. In 30 seconds, it was over. The emitters were shattered. The guards were disarmed. The solar shield flickered and died, returning to its ambient glow. Rhett stood in the center of the smoking, ruined hall, still glowing, his skin radiating a heat that warped the air around him. He was panting, steam rising from his body. He turned his head. His eyes were no longer human. They were twin golden suns, and they fixed the remaining threat, Malric Thorn. The High Inquisitor was backed against the dais, his face, for the first time, a mask of pure, abject terror. His god, his weapon, his dawn, had been turned against him by a single, anomalous man. Rhett felt the temptation. It was overwhelming. The power still thrummed in him, begging for a target. The rage for his family, fury over Seraphina's stolen life, the rage for the lies, the labs, the murder. He could end it. He could end him. He could burn the rot, starting with this man. He raised his hand, and it blazed with a new, terrifying intensity. "I should end this," he growled, his voice a chorus of solar flares. "Rhett, no." Seraphina ran. She didn't hesitate. She ran straight into the furnace. The heat seared her skin, her robes smoking. But she did not stop. She threw her arms around him from behind, clasping him in an embrace of absolute, desperate strength. Rhett roared as her undead nature touched his living light. It was agony, for both of them. His solar fire burned her, her skin sizzling, her fangs bared in a scream of pure pain. But her vampiric nature, her connection to the void, her fundamental coldness, acted as a heat sink. She was a living shroud of darkness, pulling the impossible heat from him, grounding the star god, pulling him back to earth. "Do not become him," she screamed into his back, her voice cracking as the fire licked at her. "Do not become a monster. Come back, stay with me, Rhett." The blinding, golden aura flickered. It pulsed, fighting her. But her grip was iron, her will, forged in a century of torment, was stronger. The light receded. It poured back into Rhett's skin, sinking beneath the surface, until he was just a man again, naked, steaming, and covered in his own melted armor. He collapsed, his consciousness fading. Serafina caught him. Her own arms burned black to the bone. But already, his blood in her system was healing her. High Inquisitor Malric Thorn saw his moment. His enemy was down. But the hall was lost. His plan was in ruins. He turned, smashing a hidden panel on the wall. An emergency teleporter, a blue, shimmering field of energy enveloped him. "This is not over, Dawn-bound," he shrieked. "You have not saved them. You have only doomed them all." And he was gone. The hall was in total chaos. Delegates were screaming, running for the now open doors. The disarmed guards were helping the injured. And in the middle of it all, Serafina held the unconscious form of Rhett Hale. She looked up, her red eyes meeting the terrified, awestruck, and horrified gazes of the survivors. They were staring at her, the monster, and at the man, the savior, in her arms. "Well, human," she whispered, pulling him to his feet, his arm slung over her shoulder. "You certainly know how to make an entrance." Rhett groaned, his consciousness returning. "Did I win?" "You've just become the single most dangerous, most wanted man in the galaxy," she replied, dragging him toward a service exit. "And I'm your accomplice." "Good," Rhett coughed, a grim smile touching his lips. "At least they'll spell my name right on the bounty." They vanished into the smoke and alarms, leaving the Citadel of Dawn, the heart of the Dominion, broken and terrified behind them. The Bloodwing tore through Etherion's upper atmosphere, a black scar against the planet's golden dome. Rhett was slumped in the co-pilot's chair, his body shivering, every muscle an agonizing knot. The catastrophic expenditure of energy at the Citadel had left him depleted, a hollowed-out shell. He was cold, a feeling he had not experienced in over 20 years. Serafina was at the helm. Her hands, once burned black to the bone, were already healed. The pale, luminous skin knitted back together by the potent, solar-charged blood she had taken from him. She flew with a grim, silent focus, her red eyes fixed on the unfolding void. "His signal," Rhett managed, his teeth chattering. "I tagged it. The emergency teleporter. It left a quantum scar." "I see it," she replied, her voice taut. The Bloodwing's ancient, arcane sensors were tracking a faint, messy trail of displaced particles. It was not a clean warp jump. It was a panicked, brute force tear in space. "He jumped blind, or to a hidden relay. It's unstable." "He knew where he was going," Rhett grunted, forcing himself upright. He strapped himself in, his body aching. Thorn doesn't panic. He retreats. He reevaluates. And he escalates. "He's heading into the terminus void," Serafina said, her voice grim. "Beyond the Dominion's furthest sensor net. A dead sector." "He's going home," Rhett whispered. "To his real lab. The one where he keeps his trophies." The Bloodwing plunged into warp, its arcane drive chasing the fading, angry scar of Thorn's teleport signature. They flew for hours, the silence in the cockpit thick and heavy. The adrenaline of their escape had faded, replaced by the cold, heavy weight of what they had done. They were the two most wanted sentient beings in the galaxy. They dropped out of the warp into a place where no light lived. Before them hung a structure that defied reason. It was a star, a white dwarf, but it was dead. Its light had been extinguished, its core smothered. Encasing it, like a vast, complex cage of black, metallic ribs, was a man-made station, the Black Star Fortress, a Dyson sphere built not to harvest energy, but to imprison it. "Gods above," Rhett breathed. He didn't just find a dead star. He made one. This is where he kept the Blood Throne's core, Seraphina whispered, her hands tightening on the controls. A primal, instinctive terror was rolling off her. This is a place of absolute cold, a void engine. It's also where he's hiding his original files, Rhett said, his voice hard. The ones that prove everything, the ones that clear you, and convict him. You still think this is about justice, Hunter? She asked, her voice bitter. No, Rhett replied, checking his sidearm. This is about pest control. Seraphina found a breach in the station's outer lattice, a small, unlisted maintenance port. The Bloodwing slipped inside, its dark hull perfectly camouflaged. They landed in a desolate, unpressurized hangar bay. They stepped out onto the black metal deck. The air was thin, smelling of ozone and cold metal. And it was wrong. Rhett felt it first. A dizzying, nauseating shift in the floor. Gravity flux, intermittent, he staggered. The internal pull of the station, shifting from 0.9 G to 1.4 in a heartbeat. Seraphina hissed, her body unaffected by the gravity, but her senses screaming. There is radiation here, something I have never felt. It's not a star. It's of the void. It feels black. As she spoke, a patch of shadow in the corner of the hangar detached itself. It was not a shadow. It was a drifting, amoeba-like globule of pure, writhing darkness, a tatter of black plasma. Void Wraith, Rhett growled, raising his rifle. No, worse, a plasma elemental, pure void energy. The globule drifted toward them, radiating a cold that froze the air. My turn, Seraphina said. She stepped in front of Rhett. She raised her hand, and from her palm, a different kind of darkness coalesced. It was not the hungry void of the elemental. It was a cold, controlled, absolute shadow. She extended it, and her darkness smothered the elemental, snuffing it out like a candle. Impressive, Rhett noted. The gravity fluxed again, threatening to slam him into the ceiling. As he rose, Rhett activated his gift. A low, golden light pulsed from his center of mass. A gravity anchor of pure, concentrated solar energy. He settled back to the floor, his boots planted firmly. You are a useful little furnace, aren't you? Seraphina remarked, the corner of her mouth ticking upward. And you're a handy nightlight. Let's move, Rhett said. They became a two-person engine of impossible physics. They moved through corridors where the laws of nature were on holiday. Rhett's light was the anchor, the floor, the solid ground beneath their feet, his energy neutralizing the black plasma tears. Seraphina's darkness was the shield, a cool, enveloping shroud that wrapped around them, deflecting the lethal black light radiation that poured from the station's dead star core. He built this place to kill anything living, Seraphina observed, her voice echoing in the vast, dark chambers. Only the dead, and the undead, could walk here. Or him, Rhett said. And us. We're the exceptions he never planned for. They reached the station's core. It was not a control room. It was a laboratory. A vast, circular vault, lit by the cold, blue-white glow of thousands of stasis tubes. And its center, facing a massive data console, was Malric Thorne. He was not wearing his Inquisitor's robes. He was clad in a sleek, night-black suit of power armor. It was not Dominion tech. It was older, more fluid, its surface inlaid with crimson lines that pulsed with a slow, sickly light. He turned as they entered, and a cold, academic smile touched his lips. He was not surprised. He was not afraid. He was pleased. Right on time, Thorne said, his voice amplified, calm and resonant. I knew you would come, dawn-bound. You were always programmed for confrontation. It's over, Thorne, Rhett growled, raising his rifle. We have the files. We have your confession. We have the Citadel. You've lost. Lost, Thorne laughed, a dry, academic chuckle. Hunter Hale, you are a biological failsafe, a 1 in a billion anomaly. And you think you've won. You haven't even been playing. You've just been running the maze. As designed. He gestured to the stasis tubes that lined the vault. You think this was my project, Project Sanguine, creating a new race of immortal soldiers? He shook his head. That was remedial work, a side project. The real project was you. Seraphina's eyes were fixed on the tubes. They were not empty. They held things. Twisting. Half-formed creatures. Hybrids of human and vampire. Failures of the Sanguine Project. Kept in eternal, agonizing stasis. You spoke of the Blood Throne, Thorne continued. His voice the smooth, patient cadence of a professor. You thought I merely stole it. Seraphina, I activated it. I found the ancient trigger, the hunger key, and I turned it. I needed a catalyst. I needed you to become the monster I told the galaxy you were. I needed a supreme threat to justify my supreme solution. And my family, Rhett's voice was a low, dangerous whisper. They were part of your solution, Thorne sighed, as if explaining a simple equation to a dull child. Ah, yes, Batch 7G, Cygnus 4. They were a control group. Rhett, a necessary baseline. We had to study the average to understand the exceptional. Your sister's cells showed promise, but they cascaded into failure. Yours sang when the light hit them. They were perfect. Your family's sacrifice gave the Dominion its greatest, secret weapon That broke her. Seraphina was not listening to Thorne. She was staring at the vats, at the faces, the failed experiments, the tortured hybrids, her people, her reflections. You kept them, she whispered, her voice trembling. You kept them, like trophies, like property. Of course, Thorne said, dismissive. Data. Every failure is a lesson. He will not own us, Seraphina whispered. Then she screamed. It was not a sound of rage. It was a sound of ultimate, profound grief. She did not attack Thorne. She attacked his work. She became a black cyclone. She launched herself at the stasis tubes. Her claws, which had been retracted, now extended. 2 feet of shadowy, hardened bone. She smashed the first tube. The glass exploded. The creature inside, a half-formed thing with wings and a human face, fell to the floor, spasmed, and died. No, Thorne bellowed, his academic calm finally shattering. That's irreplaceable data. He will not keep us, Seraphina shrieked, her voice a chorus of pain. She tore through the lab, a blur of righteous destruction. She was not just killing the hybrids, she was freeing them. She was erasing his collection. She smashed console after console, shattered vat after vat, her claws tearing through the metal and glass as if it were paper. Some creatures, less failed than the others, awoke. Maddened by centuries of torment, they lashed out, attacking anything that moved. One, a spindly thing with too many arms, leaped at Rhett. He incinerated it with a pulse from his sidearm, while Seraphina was erasing his past. Thorne turned to his future. The experiment is contaminated, he roared, his face purple with fury. Fine, fine. If I cannot present a controlled result, I will present a catastrophic one. He slammed his fist on the central console. A deep, seismic hum shook the entire fortress. On the station's exterior, a massive antenna array began to pivot, powering up, aimed at the black, empty void. You've ruined my work, children, Thorne shrieked. But it doesn't matter. The observers have been watching this entire time. It is time to show them the results. What did you do? Rhett yelled, advancing on him. A beacon. Thorne activated his power armor. The helmet, sleek and black as a beetle's carapace, snapped shut. The red lines on his suit flared, and a dark, cold energy, the energy of the Blood Throne's stolen core, enveloped him. A call to my superiors, the ones who own this galaxy, the ones who have been waiting for you to activate. He launched himself at Rhett. He was impossibly fast. The armor was not just armor. It was a void drive. He was channeling the throne's dark magic. He struck Rhett, not with his fist, but with a tendril of solid shadow, slamming the Dawnbound into the far wall. Rhett hit the metal, his ribs cracking. He grunted, pushing himself up, and unleashed his own power. A spear of pure, golden sunlight shot from his hand. Thorn laughed. His armor drank the light. The black void shield dissipated it, neutralized it. My armor is linked to the throne, you fool, the very antithesis of your power. You are a sun. I am a black hole. You cannot hurt me. Thorn fired a bolt of black plasma. Rhett dove, the bolt vaporizing the floor where he'd been. This was not a fight. It was an execution. Rhett was still depleted. Thorn was at full power, amplified by the stolen heart of a god. Rhett was a brawler, a soldier. He used his light as a shield, a blade. Thorn was a scientist. He used the void as a scalpel, a bludgeon. He batted Rhett around the laboratory, the impacts of their clashing energies shaking the vault. This is the end, anomaly, Thorn gloated, pinning Rhett to the floor with a localized gravity well. He raised his gauntlet, the fingers sharpening into void claws. You were designed to be the judge of humanity, Rhett, but you are just a broken, emotional, human tool, and you have failed. He prepared for the killing blow. He never saw her. Seraphina had finished her work. The lab was a ruin. The stasis tubes were shattered. The hybrids were free and dead. Her face was streaked with their amniotic fluid and her own bloody tears. Her rage was gone, replaced by a cold, absolute, and righteous certainty. She was a shadow. She was the night. She was the creature he had made. She stalked up behind him, her movements utterly silent. As Thorn raised his hand to kill Rhett, Seraphina struck. Her claws, hardened by her resolve, punched straight through the backplate of Thorn's advanced armor. They ripped through his spine, through his lungs, and burst from his chest in a spray of black armor plating and crimson blood. The void energy in the suit sputtered, hissed, and died. Thorn froze. His helmet retracted, revealing a face of total, utter shock. He looked down at the 5 black, steaming claws protruding from his sternum. Seraphina leaned in close, her hot breath on his ear. Her lips brushed his skin, and she whispered the victims' names. For Lyra, she breathed. For Kalen. For Altair Prime kids. For the 9 million souls you burned. For my court. For my sisters in the glass. Her voice broke, just for a second. And for me. She yanked her hand back. Thorn collapsed. He fell from Rhett, his armor sparking, his body a dead weight. He landed on his back, his eyes wide, staring at the ceiling. Seraphina stood over him, trembling. It was done. Her tormentor was dead. But she felt nothing. No triumph. No peace. Only a vast, cold, empty silence. The revenge was satisfying, but it was not healing. It could not erase the 100 years. It could not unmake her. The man on the floor gurgled. He was laughing. A wet, choking, bloody laugh. Do you think you've won? He coughed, blood frothing at his lips. Rhett crawled, his body bruised, his light dimmed. It's over, Thorn. Over. Thorn's eyes found Rhett's. A last, terrible, sane light of pure malice gleamed in them. You're just a pawn, Seraphina. A useful, broken tool. His gaze fixed on Rhett. And you, Rhett Hale, you aren't the cure. You aren't even the disease. You are just a symptom. Who? Rhett demanded, grabbing the dying man's armor. Who's watching? Thorn just smiled. You're part of a much, much bigger plan. You were always the failsafe. And now that you've activated, they are coming. His head lolled to the side. His eyes went vacant. Malric Thorn was dead. A klaxon blared. The beacon. Rhett, Seraphina said, her voice small. The beacon. It's still active. It's sending its signal. Before Rhett could move, the station shook. It was not an explosion. It was a lurch. As if the entire moon-sized fortress had been grabbed. What is that? Rhett staggered to a console. Outside, Seraphina whispered, her eyes wide, looking at the main view screen, which was now reactivating. Space itself, in front of the fortress, was tearing. It was not a blue warp gate. It was a jagged, kaleidoscopic fissure, as if the universe were a piece of paper being ripped in two. From the rift, ships emerged, dozens of them. They were not human. They were not vampires. They were nothing Rhett had ever seen. They were massive, city-sized vessels, shaped like perfect, crystalline, polyhedral structures. A fleet of impossible, geometric titans that glowed with a cold, blue, judgmental light. They surrounded the Black Star Fortress, their presence a weight on reality itself. And then, a voice echoed, not over the comms. It echoed inside Rhett's skull. It echoed inside Seraphina's mind. It was the voice of 1,000 ancient beings, speaking as one. It was cold, stark, and emotionless. Celestial Accord, Case File 914 Alpha. The anomaly, Dawnbound, has been activated. The Dominion, Sanguine. Protocol has failed. The quarantine is broken. All parties will stand for judgment. There was no transport beam, no shimmering light. One moment, they were in the collapsing, alarm-blaring chaos of the Black Star Fortress, and the next, they were elsewhere. The transition was a silent, sickening fold in reality. Rhett felt his body deconstructed to its component atoms and reassembled, all in the span of a single, cold heartbeat. He materialized on his knees, his body still aching from Thorn's beating, the residual cold of the void armor clinging to him. Seraphina appeared beside him, her landing more graceful, but her face pale, her red eyes wide with a profound, ancient terror. They were in a chamber that seemed to have no walls. It was a nexus of pure, soft, white light. The floor, a seamless expanse of illuminated crystal. The air was sterile, cold, and utterly silent. Before them, floating in the center of the vast space, were 3 crystalline thrones. They were empty, yet occupied. 3 distinct, non-humanoid shapes flickered within the facets of the crystals. One, a vortex of swirling gas. One, a complex, shifting latticework of light. And one, a being of pure, perfect sound. We are the Accord. The voice echoed inside their minds. It was not a sound. It was a pressure, a collective, dispassionate consciousness. Rhett staggered to his feet, his hand instinctively going for a sidearm that was no longer there. His armor, his weapons, his uniform all gone. He was clad in a simple, gray, seamless tunic. Seraphina wore a similar garment. They were prisoners. "Where are we?" Rhett demanded, his voice sounding small and abrasive in the vast, silent room. "You are on the flagship Equity, in high orbit. The Black Star Fortress has been contained." "Contained," Seraphina whispered, her voice trembling. What are you?" "We are the observers, the mediators, the failsafe. We are the Celestial Accord, for 9,000 standard cycles. We have monitored this sector, bound by the first precept non-interference. Unless a species achieves Class 7 threat level." Rhett's mind raced. Class 7 war crimes. A species that actively and knowingly creates a parasitic, sapient predator, the voice intoned. And Rhett felt the judgment aimed at him. A species that manipulates stellar bodies for purposes of genocide. The voice added. And the voice continued. A new, colder tone entering the collective. A species that seeks to subjugate others through biochemical and psychic bondage. Rhett looked at Serafina. They mean both of us. Both. Serafina's eyes widened. Are you watching all this time? You watched him create us. You watched him torture me for 112 years. There was no violation of the first precept. The Accord replied, its voice devoid of sympathy. The human dominion was in conflict with itself. It was an internal matter, until the beacon was activated, until the dawn-bound anomaly was unleashed. The quarantine is broken. So, what now? Rhett said, his voice a low growl. You've got the bad guy. Thorn is dead. His lab is destroyed. The system is broken. We've fixed it for you. The system is not broken. The system is the flaw. The Accord's presence seemed to swell, the light in the room intensifying. The human dominion and its subspecies creation, the Crimson Sovereignty, are hereby designated Class 7 threats. What? Rhett exploded. You're lumping us together. Did you not just watch what happened? I fought him. She fought him. We stopped the project. This was the moment, the quintessential, arrogant, human-first reaction. Rhett Hale, a farmer's boy from a dead colony, standing before a council of stellar deities, and he was not bowing. He was arguing. You cannot, Rhett spat, judge an entire species of 900 billion souls for the actions of one man and his secret project. Your species is defined by the systems it creates. The Accord replied, your dominion is a system of control predicated on fear, secrecy, and propaganda. It produced Malric Thorn. He is not an anomaly. He is an inevitability. That's garbage, Rhett shouted, stepping forward. A system is just a machine. You don't blame the entire species when one of their machines breaks. You blame the mechanic. Thorn was the mechanic and we just took him out. The species that created the machine is responsible for it. The potential for a second Thorn is 100%. The potential for another, sanguine project is unacceptably high. So what's your solution? Rhett demanded. What's the judgment you just wiped us out? A galactic reset, containment, or sterilization? It is the logical, merciful solution to prevent further galactic contamination. Merciful, Serafina's voice cut through the air, sharp and cold as glass. She stepped forward, her fear replaced by the ancient, regal fury of an empress. You dare speak of mercy. The Accord's collective gaze turned to her. The sanguine anomaly. Designate Nyx. You are the primary evidence. I am the primary victim, she corrected, her red eyes blazing. She was not the broken prisoner from Nyxmire. She was not the feral creature from the throne room. She was Serafina, and she was here to testify. You sat there, in your perfect crystal ships, and you watched, she said, her voice shaking with a cold, controlled rage. You watched me rise to power, not for conquest, but to end the wars my creators had programmed into my kind. I drafted peace treaties. I restricted the hunt. I was this close to integrating my people, to finding a synthetic solution, to ending the cycle. She pointed an accusatory finger at the empty, crystalline thrones. And you watched Malric Thorn offer me peace, only to lure me into an ambush. You watched him rip the blood throne from my very soul, a violation so profound you cannot even comprehend it. You watched the feedback incinerate my court. You watched him use my agony to turn me into a mindless, raging weapon. I broke worlds. Yes. I murdered billions. I will see their faces in my nightmares forever. But I was not the one holding the knife. I was the knife, and he was the human who wielded me. She took a shuddering breath, her composure absolute. And then, for 112 years, you watched me be tortured, chained to a solar battery, starved, and kept in a state of perpetual agony. And you did nothing, because it was an internal matter. She looked at Rhett, then back to the Accord. You speak of systems. I am the living product of Malric Thorne's system. Rhett Hale is the man who broke it. You call humanity a plague. He is the cure. You cannot condemn the species that produces both the poison and the antidote in the same breath. It is not logical. It is lazy. The Nexus was silent. The Accord's collective voice was gone, replaced by a tense, internal whisper that Rhett could almost feel at the edge of his hearing. They were arguing. Finally, one of the crystal thrones glowed brighter, the being of swirling gas. Its voice was singular, a deep, resonant bass. The judgment holds. The evidence is clear. The species is too volatile. They manipulate their own genetics. They weaponize stars. They create their own predators. They are an uncontained biological fire. They must be culled. Then, the second throne glowed. The being of pure, shifting light. Its voice was high, melodic, like chimes. And yet, the counter-evidence is equally compelling. The species possesses a unique, chaotic adaptability. It produced the poison, yes, but it also produced the anomaly, Dawnbound, as a direct response. It is self-correcting. This behavior is unprecedented. They are dangerous. The first voice boomed. They are interesting. The second voice sang. The third throne, the being of sound, remained dark. The tiebreaker. A long, agonizing silence stretched. Judgment is stayed. The collective voice finally returned. The internal conflict apparent. The data is incomplete. A new proposal is forwarded by the inquiry aspect. The melodic second voice took over. A test. A period of consultation. The two of you are the core of the paradox, the created monster, and the self-correcting human, the ultimate darkness, and the ultimate light. A test, Rhett asked, his gut clenching. You will remain our guests, here, on the Equity. We wish to observe, if you, the two of you, can demonstrate a stable, symbiotic model. If you can prove that the poison and the antidote can coexist without destroying each other, then that model will be used as a new precedent, a new pathway for your species. And if we fail, Serafina asked, then the judgment holds. The deep, bass voice replied, sterilization, the fire will be extinguished. The consultation begins now. The white light of the Nexus faded, and the walls became walls. They were in a room. It was large, minimalist, and furnished with objects that were a close approximation of high-end human design, a low sofa, a table, a bed. The far wall was not a wall at all, but a massive viewport looking out onto the crystalline fleet, the void, and in the distance, the captured dark shape of the Bloodwing. Rhett walked to the viewport, his reflection a pale, tired ghost in the glass. So, he said, his voice flat, we're a science experiment. The fate of the galaxy rests on whether or not you decide to eat me in my sleep. Serafina did not reply. She sank onto the edge of the low bed, her hands clasped in her lap. She looked small. The adrenaline of the fight, the escape, the confrontation, it was all gone. The silence in the room was heavier than the silence of Nixmeyer. That was, she began, her voice quiet. Impressive. In the Nexus. Your argument. Yeah. Well, Rhett grunted, not turning from the window. I've always had a problem with authority. Even cosmic, godlike authority. He rubbed his face. Lo-fi beats, he muttered. What? He turned, a small, tired smile on his face. You mentioned music, back on the Bloodwing. When this is all over. She looked up, surprised he had remembered. Yes, I heard a broadcast fragment from an old Earth archive. It was gentle. There was no screaming, no orders, just rain and a soft sound. Lo-fi hip-hop beats to relax and study too, Rhett said, the smile widening. You, the Empress of Night, the butcher of billions, you want to listen to study music. A flicker of something, not a smile, but a softening touched her lips. Is that so strange? After a century of noise, I crave the quiet. I crave the banal. No, Rhett said, his voice softer. It's not strange at all. He walked over and sat on the sofa, a respectful distance away. When will we get out of this? What will you do? She looked at her hands. I do not know. I am not the Empress. I am not the weapon. I do not know what I am. Maybe I will find an ocean, in a world with a dim, red sun. And I will listen to your lo-fi. She looked at him. And you, Hunter. What will you do? When you are not hunting, Rhett leaned back, his head resting on the alien fabric. I want to go home, except I don't have one. He pondered for a moment. I want to find a world, a warm one. And I want to sit on a porch, under a real sun. And I just want to feel it on my face, and not feel like I'm a loaded gun, about to go off. He looked at her. I want to be a farmer's boy again, for one afternoon. They sat in silence. Two refugees, their respective wars finally over, only to be replaced by a new, colder one. They were not just Rhett and Seraphina. They were humanity, and they were the vampires, and they had to learn to share a room. A soft, chime-like sound preceded the arrival of a new being. It was the aspect of inquiry, the melodic voice. It manifested in the center of the room, not as a crystal, but as a tall, slender, vaguely humanoid shape composed of shifting, golden light and soft sound. This is the proctor, its voice sang in their minds. The consultation requires a clean slate. Rhett stood, his body tensed, but Proctor's presence was not threatening. It was academic. Anomaly Nix, the proctor chimed, turning its head toward Seraphina. Your testimony was compelling, but it was incomplete. You are still bound. I am not, Seraphina said, standing. The blood throne is gone. Its core is gone, but its mechanisms remain, the proctor replied. It raised a hand of light, and Seraphina flinched. The blood sigils, the arcane bindings woven into your very cells by Malric Thorn. They are the source of your feral hunger, the source of your need. They are a contamination. We cannot consult with a being who is not herself. What are you going to do? Rhett asked, stepping forward. A cleansing, deprogramming. It is necessary for the experiment, the proctor chimed. Please, be seated. Anomaly Nix. Seraphina looked at Rhett, her eyes wide with a new, fresh terror. This thing was offering to remove the very core of her vampiric nature, the hunger that had defined her for millennia. Do it, she whispered, her voice shaking. She sat on the floor, her legs crossed and closed her eyes. The proctor raised both hands. It did not move. It did not touch her. It began to sing. It was a song of pure, complex mathematics, a harmony of frequencies that Rhett could feel in his teeth. Seraphina gasped, her back arched. She did not scream. She wept. Dark, oily, smoke-like threads of shadow began to pull from her skin. They were drawn from her pores, from her chest, from her temples, shadowy sigils and runes that had been branded on her soul, now made visible. They were the remnants of the blood throne, the ancient, dark magic. The proctor's song rose in pitch, and the dark threads were pulled free, dissolving in the air, neutralized by the pure, logical sound. It lasted for 10 agonizing seconds. Then, Seraphina slumped forward, panting, her body bathed in sweat. The song stopped. "It is done," Proctor chimed. "The contamination is purged." Rhett rushed to her side, kneeling. "Seraphina, are you?" She looked up at him. Her eyes were still red. But the desperate, hungry, feral fire was gone. They were just eyes. They were the eyes of the woman he had first seen in Nixmeyer, the weary, ancient prisoner. "Aye," she whispered, her hand going to her chest. "The hunger, the fire, the need." "What?" Red asked. "It's gone," she breathed, a look of profound, terrified wonder on her face. "I am still me. I am still this. But the thirst, the void, it is quiet. It is gone." She looked at him, and her new vulnerability was a weapon far more potent than her rage had ever been. "I feel weak. I feel human." "The vessel is cleansed," Proctor chimed. "The consultation can proceed." The being of light dissolved, leaving them alone again. Rhett stared at her. The monster was gone. All that was left was the woman. He found himself wanting to protect her, a feeling that was new and dangerous. He spent the next cycle, what the Accord called a period of observation, in a state of profound conflict. He watched Seraphina. She was different. She was quiet, pensive. She explored the quarters with a simple curiosity. She ate the synthetic nutrient paste the Accord provided, and did not complain. She was at peace. But Rhett was not. He stood by the viewport, watching the vast, crystalline fleet. He had saved the day. He had stopped the villain. And now, he was on trial for his species' life. What if the Accord was right? He thought of the lab, his family, the cold smile of the doctor, Thorne, the purifiers, the Dominion's arrogance. Humanity was a plague. It was a fire. It consumed everything it touched. He looked at Seraphina. She was sleeping on the cot. Her face relaxed, free of torment for the first time in a century. She, the monster, was the only one who had shown him true loyalty, true partnership. If the Accord ruled against humanity, if they gave him the choice, which side would he pick, the corrupt species that had birthed and betrayed him, or the reformed monster who had saved him? He was so lost in his thoughts. He did not notice the Proctor materialize behind him. "You are in conflict, Rhett Hale," the melodic voice sang softly. Rhett turned. "Get out of my head." "It is not your head. It is your aura. It radiates. Your companion is free of her primary influence. But you are not." "What are you talking about?" Rhett growled. "I'm not the one with magic sigils." "No," the Proctor agreed. "You are the one with the Sentinel designation. Malric Thorne was correct about one thing. You are a failsafe." "We've been over this," Rhett said, impatient. "You have not," the Proctor corrected. "You do not understand the nature of that designation. Thorne, in his arrogance, believed he had created you. He believed you were a weapon he could aim." The being of light drifted closer, its form pulsing with a new, serious intensity. "Malric Thorne did not create you, Rhett Hale. He only found you. He activated a process that was seeded in your genetic line 10,000 years ago. By us. By a faction of the Accord that believed humanity was interesting." Rhett's blood ran cold. "You made me. We encourage the potential. You are not a weapon, dawnbound. You are the key." "A key to what?" "Thorne was wrong about Seraphina, too," Proctor sang, ignoring his question. "He thought she was his monster. He never understood her true purpose. She did not take the test. She was not the prize." The Proctor's light form stopped directly in front of Rhett, its face inches from his. She was the catalyst, Rhett Hale. She was designed, by the universe, by her very nature as his perfected vessel, for one purpose: to find you, to push you, to unlock you. "Unlock what?" Rhett demanded, his voice shaking. Thorne believed your power was to judge humanity. He was short-sighted, the proctor chimed, a note of something alien, perhaps anticipation in its voice. The final hearing will commence in one period. There, your true purpose will be revealed. The proctor began to fade. Be prepared, Rhett Hale. The choice you are about to make will not just decide your species' fate. It will define it. They were in the white nexus again. The air was cold, sterile, and absolute. The three crystalline thrones of the celestial accord shimmered before them, the aspects within gas, light, and sound swirling with a tense, judgmental energy. Rhett stood, his body restored, but his mind wary. Beside him, Seraphina was a new creature. The proctor purge had been profound. Her red eyes were clear, the fires of the feral hunt extinguished, leaving only the ancient, weary intelligence of the woman she had been. She was, for the first time in millennia, truly, agonizingly herself. She was terrified. We have concluded the consultation. The collective voice of the accord echoed in their minds, a chilling, harmonic chord of dispassionate logic. The testimony of the anomaly. Nyx is accepted. The actions of the anomaly, Hale, are observed. Then you know the truth, Rhett said, his voice flat, his fists clenched. Thorne, the Dominion, the Sanguine Project, it was all them. The truth is more complex. The melodic voice of the proctor, the inquiry aspect, chimed in. It was no longer a humanoid shape, but had returned to its crystal throne. Malric Thorne was a primitive. He found a mechanism he did not comprehend. He believed he was an architect. He was, in fact, merely a janitor, stumbling upon a master key. What are you talking about? Rhett's skin prickled. He did not create your potential, Rhett Hale. He merely activated it. The proctor sang. Your lineage. It was not an accident. It was a design. Seraphina looked at Rhett, her eyes wide with a new, dawning horror. The designation, Dawnbound, is a misnomer, a primitive label. The collective voice returned, now dominated by the deep bass tones of the judgment aspect. Your true title is Sentinel Designation, Class 9, a failsafe, seeded in your species' genome 10,000 cycles ago. Seeded by who? Rhett's voice was a low growl. By a faction of this accord, the proctor chimed, its light pulsing with what might have been pride. A faction that argued humanity was interesting. They argued that your species' unique blend of creativity and self-destruction required a unique, internal regulator. You, Sentinel, are that regulator. Am I a circuit breaker? Rhett felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. You are a judge. The deep voice of the judgment aspect boomed, overruling the proctor. A living weapon, programmed with one ultimate purpose. Should the human species ever achieve Class 7 threat level, as it has now, you are designed to enact the solar judgment. Solar judgment, Seraphina whispered, her hand instinctively going to her throat. A complete and total cleansing. The judgment aspect replied, the power you unleashed at the Citadel was a mere spark. Your true potential is to channel the core of a star, to amplify yourself through the warp network, and to incinerate your entire species. A biological reset for the galaxy. Rhett stared, horrified. His entire life, his secret, his gift. It was a planetary suicide bomb. And Seraphina, he managed, his voice thick. She was the catalyst. The proctor sang softly, the perfected vessel. As Thorne called her, he never knew the truth. Her purpose was not to be his weapon. Her purpose was to be your test. The mission, Rhett whispered, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying precision. The mission to Nyxmire was the final examination. The collective voice confirmed. We needed to know. If the Sentinel's programming was confronted by a contradiction, a direct order from your corrupt masters versus the moral imperative to protect an innocent, which path would you choose? You chose the moral imperative, the proctor sang. You sided with the anomaly. You protected the victim. You rejected your human masters. You failed the test of obedience. The judgment aspect boomed. You have proven that humanity's core flaw, emotion, overrides even its own cosmic safeguard. You are unreliable. So what now? Rhett felt the trap closing. You've got your rogue weapon, your failed experiment. What do? The power is active, the judgment aspect intoned. It cannot be unmade. It must be directed. The threat of the Dominion remains. The potential for a new Thorn is absolute. The logical, safe, and merciful path is clear. The three aspects seem to lean forward, their collective will focusing on Rhett like a burning lens. We offer you the choice, Sentinel. The choice that you were designed to make. What choice? Activate the solar judgment. At a limited, controlled level. You possess the precision. We will provide the targeting. We will help you. Burn out the Dominion High Command. Cleanse Etherian. Scorch the Purifier fleets. Reset your species' leadership. It is a surgical culling of the corruption. It is the only way to save the galaxy. It is your purpose. Seraphina grabbed Rhett's arm, her grip desperate. She looked, for the first time, truly, mortally afraid. She was not afraid of him. She was afraid for him. Rhett, she breathed, her voice a desperate, terrified whisper. No, don't listen to them. This is what he did. This is Thorn's choice, a surgical culling, a necessary sacrifice. It's his logic. It's a trap. Rhett stood silent. He felt the power inside him, the banked furnace, which had been dormant since the Citadel. It stirred. It listened. I agreed. The Accord was right. It was logical. And in that moment, the temptation was so profound, so absolute. It was a physical agony. He wanted to. He saw his mother's face, pale and confused, in the lab on Cygnus 4. He saw his father, strapped to a table, his skin blistering under the test lights. He saw his little sister, her small hand reaching for him, before she cascaded. He saw the cold, satisfied smile of the doctor. He saw Malric Thorn, standing on the observation deck, observing his data, the rage, the grief, the 20 years of suppressed, burning hatred. All of it rose up in him. It was sunny. It was a nova. It begged to be born. He had the power. He had the justification. He had the permission of the galaxy gods. He could burn it all away. He could scour the rot. He could avenge his family. He could finally, let the fire out. He felt the power build, his skin beginning to glow, a low, golden light radiating from his chest. Rhett, please. Seraphina wept, her grip tightening. Don't become the monster they built you to be. Please. I begged you in Nixmire not to let them win. He looked at her, her red eyes, not the eyes of a monster, not the eyes of an empress, the eyes of a prisoner. Let them not make me a monster. And in that instant, he understood. The Accord, in their cold, sterile, perfect logic, were doing the exact same thing to him that Thorn had done to her. They were giving him a righteous, logical, necessary reason to become a butcher of billions. They were giving him the script. They were handing him the knife. He had told her they would write their own ending. Rhett Hale closed his eyes. The golden light intensified, and the Accord aspects pulsed, anticipating his compliance. You're right, he whispered, his voice a low growl of compressed power. I am the judge. Seraphina let out a small, broken sob. But you're wrong, Rhett continued. About the verdict. He opened his eyes. They were not the burning, vengeful sons of the Citadel. They were clear, calm, and absolutely, incandescently, humanly defiant. "I'm not following your script." He didn't raise his hands. He didn't aim. He simply let go. But he did not push the power. He rewrote it. He did what no one, not Thorn, not the Accord, not even the ancient faction that had designed him, had ever anticipated. He was a farmer's boy. He was creative. He didn't unleash a weapon. He unleashed a cure. A wave of pure, golden, warm energy flooded the Nexus. It was no beam of destruction. It was a pulse of pure, coded liberation. It was the solar rebirth. The three aspects of the Accord recoiled, their crystalline thrones cracking under the strain of a power they had never witnessed. "What is this?" the judgment aspect roared, a note of genuine, synthetic panic in its voice. "This is not the judgment. You are violating the protocol." "I am the protocol," Rhett bellowed, his voice a chorus of pure, harmonious light. "And I say the system is corrupt. The verdict isn't death, it's freedom." The golden wave did not stop. It hit the Accord's central nexus, and using their own transgalactic network, their own divine framework, it spread, instantaneously, everywhere, in the dead, cold laboratory of the Black Star Fortress, the obsidian, thrumming core of the Blood Throne. Thorn's ultimate prize shuddered. The golden light touched it, not as a fire, but as a solvent. The ancient, dark, hungry magic that had enslaved a species it dissolved. It cracked, shattered, and evaporated into harmless, neutral energy. On a raider ship, drifting in the umbral expanse, Captain Malachor was snarling at a lieutenant, the feral, ancient, aching need for blood rising in his throat. Suddenly, it was gone. He stopped, mid-snarl. He blinked. He clutched his chest. The thirst, the void. The screaming, eternal, agonizing hole in his soul that had defined his entire existence was silent. He was still a vampire, but the feral hunger was gone. He was just himself, on Etherian, in the shattered, smoking ruins of the Citadel. A purifier captain raised his sidearm to execute a senator who was screaming about the truth. His targeting implant, his loyalty sigil, his entire framework of programmed hate went dark. He stopped. He looked at his gun. He looked at the terrified, unarmed man. He blinked, as if waking from a 100-year-old dream. He lowered his weapon. Across the 914 systems, it was the same. Every Dominion control implant, every slave sigil, every piece of arcane and technological magic designed to control, to enslave, to force obedience was neutralized, burned clean by a wave of pure, golden liberty. The Dominion did not fall. It simply woke up. In the Nexus, Rhett Hale fell to one knee, panting, the light fading from him. He was exhausted. He was empty. He was free. Seraphina stared, her hands at her mouth. She had felt it. The last, deepest, most ancient chain. The origin of her species' curse. The very thing Thorn had written into her DNA, it had snapped. She was still Seraphina. She was still a creature of the night. Her heart did not beat, but the driving, feral, monstrous need that had been her tormentor was gone. She was, for the first time, completely and utterly, the master of herself. She rushed to him, but she did not fall. She was laughing. It was a breathless, awestruck, slightly hysterical sound. Tears streamed from her clear, red eyes. You glorious, arrogant, impossible human," she choked out, pulling him to his feet. "You didn't just break the rules. You didn't just hack the test. You just hacked the gods." They turned. The Accord was total, utter chaos. The judgment aspect was roaring, its gassy form expanding to fill the Nexus. Unprecedented violation. The system is compromised. The judgment is a single, clear, Perfect note cut through the air, silencing the roar. It came from the third throne, the silent aspect, the being of pure sound, the arbiter. The judgment is nullified. The note sang, its logic absolute. The judgment aspect visibly deflated, a species that can produce, identify, and cure its own corruption cannot be judged. The arbiter's note resonated. A species that can rewrite its own divine imperative cannot be contained. The inquiry aspect's light pulsed, bright, and delighted. It is a new precedent, the human exception. The paradox is solved. The experiment is over. The arbiter declared, the quarantine is lifted. The three aspects vanished. The crystalline thrones went dark. The white light of the nexus softened, stabilized. It was over. Weeks later, months. Time was different here. They stood on a balcony. It was not part of the equity. It was a new place, a station built in the neutral territory of a swirling, colorful nebula. Accord Station Alpha, the new beginning. Rhett leaned on the railing, wearing a simple, dark civilian jacket. He watched the colors of the gas clouds. He felt quiet. Serafina walked up beside him. She was not in a prisoner's tunic or a tattered gown. She wore a simple, elegant, dark dress. Her hair was down. She looked like a queen, but a queen at peace. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice soft. "I'm still not used to it." The silence. In my head. "You'll get there," Rhett said, not looking away from the nebula. "How was the council meeting?" Serafina sighed. A very human, very tired sound. Infuriating. The new human provisional government is arrogant, loud, and smells faintly of panic. My free blood vampires are paranoid, snobbish, and keep arguing about blood synthetic flavor protocols. And the Xylos delegates just want us to stop bickering and fix the shipping lanes. Rhett chuckled. Sounds like progress. She turned, leaning against the railing beside him, looking at his profile. The first day I met you, Rhett Hale, in that cold, dark throne room, I begged you to kill me. He nodded, a small, sad smile touching his lips. I remember. I was so certain it was the only way. The only way to be free, she said, her voice a murmur. I am profoundly grateful that you are as stubborn as every other human I have ever had the misfortune of meeting. He finally turned to look at her. The red of her eyes was like a nebula itself, deep and full of starlight. Sorry, Empress, he said, his smile widening. It's a species flaw. We have a terrible, terrible habit of not following the script. He held out his hand. She looked at it for a moment. His hand. The one that had held the sun. The one that had freed a galaxy. Serafina. The last Empress. The first free blood. The anomaly. The survivor. Put her hand in his. It was not cold. He was not burning. They just fit. Together, they turned and watched the birth of a new star.